Good morning. All those in the chambers and galleries, please rise. We'll begin our work today with a prayer from Monsignor Kerwicki.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let us all bow our heads and pray. In your presence, O God, we pause for a moment, lifting our hearts unto you in prayer. As we pray, our strength is renewed, our courage restored, and our path is made plain. What we felt we could not do, now we can do. What we thought hopeless is now full of hope. And what seemed impossible now becomes possible. We are ready for anything through the strength of your Spirit living in our hearts and in our minds. Bless our citizens with your favor and make them channels for peace and justice in our Show Me state during this Black History Month. And the House says,
Amen. Please remain standing and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the approval of the House Journal for the 15th day, Tuesday, January 31st, 2023, and I ask for a roll call vote.
The gentleman from Jackson has moved for the approval for the House Journal for the 15th day, Tuesday, January the 31st, 2023, and has requested a roll call vote. Are there any additions or subtractions to the journal? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the journal will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Mr. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. Has everybody voted? Mr. Clerk, please close the board and tally the vote. By your vote of 138 yea, 0 nay, and 4 present, you've approved of the journal. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be introduction of special guests.
Introduction of special guests. Gentleman from St. Louis County, Adams District.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are honored today to have in our presence a former state representative from St. Louis County. He will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, between the 5th and the 6th column, and now he is the current assessor in St. Louis County. Former representative, my friend, Jake Zimmerman.
Welcome to the House, Representative. Further introductions. Lady from Clay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Introduction of special guests.
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, on your left and my right, here between the 4th and the 5th columns, also joining us up here in the upper gallery, we have students from Youth with Vision. Youth with Vision, Mr. Speaker, if you don't mind, can I have a little order in here?
Would the members please keep your conversations to a minimum as we introduce our special guest? Lady, please continue.
I appreciate that, Mr. Speaker. Youth with Vision is an organization that was created back in 1994. It serves students in Clay, Platte, and Ray counties. This is a student-led organization. And these students are here today to advocate on issues that are important to them in their schools and in their communities, specifically fighting the devastating effects of alcohol and other drug use, as well as promoting mental health in their schools. I'd like here to introduce some of the student leaders, again, between the 4th and the 5th pillars. We have Anna Tucker from Lawson High School. We have Mary Kimberly from Liberty North, and Demi Reekers from Platte County High School. Joining them is their incredible sponsor, Sherry Miller, the Youth with Vision sponsor from Tri-County Mental Health. I ask that the members of the House please make them feel welcome.
Gentleman from Cape.
To introduce the special guest.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Those of us who have the honor to serve in this body can only be here because of the sacrifices that are made on our behalf. Today, to your right and my left in the South Gallery between columns 3 and 4 stands my wife. It is only because of the support and love of our families that we can be here away from our families to represent our districts. Please join me in extending a heartfelt thanks to all of our family members, and specifically my wife Janice, for all they do to support us today.
Welcome to the House, lady. Lady from Camden.
Introduction of special guests, please.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To your right and my left, between the second and third columns, and also to your left in the upper gallery, I'd like to recognize a very special group of individuals and just give you a little bit of background. In only the third year as a program, the Camdenton Army Junior ROTC Raider team, led by Lieutenant Colonel retired Brendan McKiernan and First Sergeant retired David Dowell, competed in and won the All-Service Raider National Championship held on the 3rd of November 2022 in Molina, Georgia. Raider competitions are a series of physical events designed to test teams' physical strength, endurance, and teamwork. Events include a 5K run in uniform and boots, construction of and crossing a one-rope bridge across a river, a 1-mile gauntlet that includes negotiating an 8-foot wall, culverts, and other obstacles while carrying 35-pound rucksacks and 40-pound ammo crates, and a half-mile physical team test. Throughout the season, Camdenton Raiders finished first or second place in every single regional competition. Then, on November 3rd, 2022, the best teams from across the nation traveled to Molina, Georgia, to put their skill to the test and to determine a national champion. We are proud to announce that our very own Camdenton Raiders claimed the title and brought home a national championship to the state of Missouri, the Camdenton community, and the Camdenton R3 school district. And here today, representing the team, are the team members, including, again, to my left here, the team captains, Cadet Seth Burmeister and Cadet Bo Darnell, the team sponsors, and then, as I said, up in the upper gallery, the remainder of the team, and that's Cadets Rhodes, Lopez, Holt, Garcia, Pearson, Ferguson, Robbins, Garcia, Virtue, and Baker. Please make this group of amazing individuals warmly welcomed.
Gentleman from Boone. Jackson?
That's correct.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. For introduction of special guests.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I would like to introduce to you a couple sets of guests. Between the first and second column, to your left and to my right, is Darla Bellflower. Darla Bellflower is a dear friend of mine. We've worked professionally together, and she right now works at the Amani House, which is part of Swope Health Services in Kansas City, Missouri. She uses her own lived experience of substance use to help impact others on their journey toward recovery. And her wife, Sarah, is the CEO of the Center for Developmentally Disabled in Kansas City. They both are big pillars of the independence community. Unfortunately, they live just across the street from my district, but I would ask in just a bit that you welcome her to the House. But between the second and third columns are my parents, JC and Debbie Crossley. I am proud to have them here today. I believe that anything good and wholesome and virtuous within me, they have passed on to me, and although I imperfectly try to live that out, I live it out to the best of my ability. And so I would ask that the House welcome all of my special guests today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Welcome to the House. Lady from Green.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Introduction of special guests.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To my right and your left, between the fourth and fifth columns, I have a shadow with me today. I'd like the body to help me welcome Ann Coulter. Ann recently attended the University of St. Andrews in Scotland and Missouri State University for undergrad. Graduated in 2020 with a degree in literature and will be attending law school in the fall. And she's going to be hanging out with me all day today. So please help me make her feel welcome.
Welcome to the House. Lady from St. Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have an introduction of a special guest.
Please proceed.
To your right and my left, between the third and fourth column, we have the gentleman known for ringing that board and opening that bell, the former Gentleman for St. Charles County and Speaker Pro Tem John Weeman.
Welcome to the House, Representative. Already having withdrawals, I see. Gentleman from Cape, Hovis District.
Mr. Speaker, to recognize some special guests.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we have the Pan-Atlantic Foundation Exchange Student Program. We had several students scattered through the state. Get them to rise up there. We may have announced some of them earlier. There was a large group from Cape Girardeau, Southeast Missouri, couldn't make it because of the terrible weather down there that we had over the last few days. But I do want to recognize the 6 students and the chaperone that came to visit us here at the House today. And I'm not going to try to pronounce their last names, but we have Victor from the country of Moldova, Amanda from the country of Kyrgyzstan, Alicia from Kazakhstan, Ahmed from Palestine, Venera from Georgia, and that's not the state of Georgia, that's the country of Georgia. And we have Lara from Germany, and then Tabitha Burge of Buckner, Missouri. I'd like for the House to make them feel welcome because they're visiting from other countries.
Welcome to the House. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Introduction of special guests.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Directly behind me in the upper gallery is the Washington University Graduate Law and Social Work Lobbying class, along with their professor, Anna Shapson. They're in the Capitol today, and if they visit you to discuss a certain piece of legislation, I hope you'll give them a fun and fulfilling lobbying experience. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Welcome to the House. Further introductions to special guests. Seeing none. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be special announcements, and I ask you to recognize the lady from Jackson, District 6.
Lady from Jackson. Lady from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Special announcement to your left and to my right, in between the 5th and 6th pillar, we have our intern, Luke Pittman, and it is his birthday today. So I'd like everybody to wish him and join me in wishing him a very happy birthday. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Lady from St. Louis County, Terry District.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Points of personal privilege.
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to acknowledge the start of Black History Month, a time when we honor the contributions of Black Americans to our society, a time to recognize the voluntary actions of our ancestors and the future inspired to continue their legacy in the centuries-long fight for equality. This month, the Missouri Legislative Black Caucus will bring light to the stories of the Black men who have walked the halls of this building as lawmakers, men who brought change to their communities and moved this state forward during times that were tougher than what we face today. We will share stories of Black men who have served in leadership positions, who helped create the Black Caucus, men who helped transform their communities into economic energies for the entire state. They are stories of perseverance and triumph. Our hope is that their legacy will future inspire all of us to follow their examples and work together to build a more equitable future for the state of Missouri. Mr. Speaker, on this day, I also rise to say his name, Tyree Nichols. Tyree Nichols. He was a photographer, he was a father, and he was a son. His life mattered. Black men deserve to grow old. They deserve respect, and they deserve to leave their homes without a target on their back. And their mothers deserve to know their sons will be afforded basic decency. All mothers deserve that. Mr. Speaker, I ask now for a moment of silence to respect the life of Tyree Nichols.
Would the members please rise and honor a moment of silence for Mr. Nichols. Thank you. Gentleman from Jackson.
Mr. Speaker, next order of business will be first reading of House bills and joint resolutions.
Mr. Clerk, would you please read the House bills and House joint resolutions?
House Bill number 1010, introduced by Cristo Finelli, an act relating to the disclosure of information regarding certain children. House Bill number 1011, introduced by Kelly 127, an act relating to taxation. And House Bill number 1012, introduced by Mattison, an act relating to nurse staffing requirements with penalty provisions and a delayed effective date.
Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be House joint resolutions, and I ask you to recognize the gentleman from St. Francis for a motion on House Committee substitute for House Joint Resolution 43.
Gentleman from St. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Committee substitute for House Joint Resolution 43 be perfected and printed.
The gentleman from St. Francis has moved for the perfection and printing of House Joint Resolution 43. Gentleman from St. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the title of House Committee substitute for House Joint Resolution 43 be agreed to.
The gentleman from St. Francis has moved for the adoption of House Committee substitute to House Joint Resolution 43. Gentleman from St. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Joint Resolution 43 deals with initiative petition.
Gentlemen, I believe we just adopted the House Committee substitute to House Joint Resolution. You moved that be adopted. I believe now we're moving on to the title.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the title of House Committee substitute for House Joint Resolution 43 be agreed to.
The gentleman from St. Francis has moved for the adoption of the title for House Committee substitute to House Joint Resolution 43. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of adopting the title to House Committee substitute to House Joint Resolution 43 will signify by saying aye. And those opposed, no. And the ayes have it. You've adopted the title. Gentleman from St. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Committee substitute for House Joint Resolution 43 deals with initiative petition. It's something that our voters in Missouri have used for a number of years, and something this is not trying to take away from them in any way. I believe that the Missouri Constitution is a living document, but not an ever-expanding document. And right now it has become an ever-expanding document with over 60 additions since 1945 to the Constitution. Missouri has one of the larger constitutions in the country. And I believe that the Constitution is a pretty sacred document. If you look back, the U.S. Constitution, which I hold in high regard, has been amended 17 times since 1791. And it takes 75% of the states to amend the U.S. Constitution. So I hold the Constitution pretty sacred. So let's get to the heart of what House Committee substitute for House Joint Resolution 43 does. It's pretty simple. We leave the signatures just as they are right now. We take the percentage and move it from a simple majority to 60%. Our Constitution really should not be for sale for outside groups who can throw $3 to $5 million into the state of Missouri, and many of these groups have no tie to our state, to try to reimagine Missouri in their vision. I think it should be in the vision of the people of the state of Missouri. I think it's very important that we put this, and we also make this clear. If this House Joint Resolution is passed, all we are doing is asking to move an initiative petition forward. We're going to ask the people to vote. The people of Missouri will decide if we are right or wrong. We are not overstepping the people. We are going to the people and asking them to say, what is your opinion of this? Should it be changed to 60%? And with that, Mr. Speaker, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Further discussion on House Committee substitute House Joint Resolution 43. Gentleman from Boone.
To inquire.
Please proceed. Does gentleman yield?
I do.
Please proceed.
How are you, gentlemen?
Very good. How are you?
Good. It's, I feel like we have these same conversations over and over in committee and on the floor.
Kind of like Groundhog Day in some ways.
Absolutely. I wanted to talk about your resolution. And so the primary thrust of it is what?
The primary thrust of it is that I don't think our Constitution should be for sale. I think at the 50% right now, the people of Missouri, in my opinion, and I hear this from my constituents, feel like sometimes they're full at the ballot box. they're busy. They're working every day. They're very smart people. So we're not saying they're very smart.
Right.
They look at things. I get calls to say, what does this amendment really do? Right. Let's take the last amendment, Amendment 3. Okay, we had 50 words, and I think it was approximately 73 pages. I think a lot of people feel like, whoa, I don't know if I really knew everything that was in there. If you've looked at all the things it does with the expungement and all the other aspects of it, even a little piece in there, and I'm going to inquire about this later, that says that if you are going to not let these micro businesses into your municipality, you have to have a 60% vote. Now, so they put one on there that passed at a simple majority, but are saying if you want to keep it out of your community, you don't want to allow these in your community, you have to have a 60% vote. That is kind of what I'm talking about, where people feel like sometimes they're not getting everything that's in it. That's why I'm looking to raise it to 60%.
Absolutely, and I agree with you 100%, because we definitely don't want people to be fooled. And that's really the subject of my inquiry. If you look at the ballot language, and you said the purpose of your resolution is to raise the threshold, more accountability, things can be vetted in a more appropriate ways. But let's take a look at your ballot language. The first thing in your ballot language, Representative, it says, shall the Missouri Constitution be amended to allow only citizens of the United States to qualify as legal voters? Now, I would say that's misleading. You did, because when you talked about your resolution, you didn't talk about that to any great degree. You talked about not fooling the voters, but Representative, voters are going to be fooled by this, because when you read that, that's the first thing that's on their mind. And you talked about Amendment 3 and things being buried down and people not understanding, but that's my concern, is that we're talking about fairness in this body, and we're talking about not misleading voters, but yet the first thing we have on the ballot language says to allow only citizens of the United States to qualify as legal voters. And my fear is that people are going to go into the ballot box and think that's really what this is about, and they're going to be misled.
I think that's clarification language, and let me explain what I mean by that. As you go through the Constitution, it's in statute. I will agree that it's in statute that you have to be an American citizen. In the Constitution, the only place I found it was 26th Amendment, Section 1, that says the rights of citizens of the U.S. who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied. But if you look at our Constitution, I don't think it says that in there, so it would enshrine that in the Constitution, and I think that was important to some people.
Well, why don't we put it further down the list? Because if we're discussing, not misleading people and not giving people the wrong idea about what the thrust of this is about, because wouldn't you agree that is a tad misleading, Representative?
Well, I think we have 50 words to say what we want, exclude anything that's and, sure, or, and so we tried to work on language that we thought would work within that, and that's the language I plan on bringing forward with this bill if this bill is passed.
And I understand that we only have 50 words to work with, but why lead with it?
I just think that's...
Why lead with it? Because that's really not what this is about.
I think it's clarification language to move this bill forward.
Well, if we want to clarify, let's put it, because you said it's already enshrined in statute. Why lead with it? Let's put it, why not put it down third? I mean, would you be opposed to it being further down just to make sure, if we're all about clarity, just to make sure we're all clear about what your resolution is about, would you be open to moving it down a little bit?
Really, not right now. I think we've worked with this language, and as you know, we work, I think you are an attorney. And there's a lot of attorneys in this body, so it probably makes some people mad, but attorneys, sometimes you talk to one attorney what it means, another attorney what. We've worked with a number of attorneys to try to work out language they think will pass the test if it's challenged. And so this is the language we came up with, so right now I do not want to change the language.
Well, whether it's going to pass or not has nothing to do with the order it's placed on the ballot as far as the language goes. So that has nothing to do with it passing anything. It has to do with, because, like I said, our theme here is making it clear for voters. And I just think we need to be transparent in this body, transparent to the Missouri citizens what we're doing. And if we're going to do something that has such gravity as what you're proposing, let's be honest with everybody. And I'm not saying you're being dishonest, but let's not go down a misleading rabbit hole here.
And the gravity of the situation really, when we talk about that, is all we're doing is trying to see if we put this before the voters, just like they did Amendment 3 and several other amendments in the last few years, to see if they agree with us. They may agree with, they may not.
Well, I just think we need to be consistent, because if we're talking about clarity and not misleading, but then the very first thing we do, Representative, the very first thing we do in the ballot language is to basically throw people off. But thank you for your inquiry.
Thank you.
To speak on the bill.
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, that's a big concern here, is that, we talk about one thing. We talk about clarity. We talk about not misleading people. We heard the representative talk about Amendment 3 and how there are things buried down in it. People really didn't know what was in the amendment. But yet here, the very first sentence states to allow only citizens of the United States to qualify as legal voters, and that's really not what this is about. That's already enshrined in statute. And I think we need to understand the process here, because I think process is a big part of what's happening. You know, there's been arguments in committee, and another piece of the rationale as well. We can't really trust the voters, right? If we're going to do something and we're going to have a constitutional amendment, it needs to come through the body, right? It needs to come through the body because people are misled there out on their own and submitting their own initiative petitions. But let's talk about process for a minute. And, you know, my colleague from the Adams District really waxed eloquently in committee about this when this was before this was brought to the floor. This was brought up, I believe, on a Tuesday for a hearing, Mr. Speaker. Normally what happens is a process, we'd come back a week later. We'd have time to debate. We'd have time to talk about it. We'd have time to offer amendments. This was set for Thursday morning to exec out. That was less than 48 hours to really go over the nuts and bolts of this amendment or this resolution. And as many of you remember, the Wednesday in between the Tuesday and Thursday was the general laws hearing that went till 2 in the morning, and I know there was one or more of people on my committee that were involved in that. So there wasn't enough time for the legislators to really examine this, to offer amendments, and to vet this. And I don't know if a lot of people realize that the actual sub that we're looking at today was actually offered as an amendment the morning of. So we debated one resolution on Tuesday. It was set to exec on Thursday, and Thursday morning a brand new committee sub was dropped for us to interpret right then. So on the spot, we had to look at the 60% requirement, which was different than 2/3, so 60% is better than that. But you see the point, Mr. Speaker, is that we didn't have adequate time to vet it. What we're looking at today was dropped right in front of us, and we had to vote immediately at 9-something in the morning. So, and I think we need to understand that, because we're talking about, the idea is, well, you know, the people out there can't be trusted, but is this, in this chamber, are things being properly vetted? Maybe that's the only way that citizens have a voice, because a voice surely wasn't heard in committee. And as you recall, the massive voting bill that came through last session, Mr. Speaker, we had about an hour to discuss that. That was pushed through. Many people on the other side of the aisle weren't even aware of what was in that provision. I had one friend, a Republican, tell me, you know, if I would have known what was in, I wouldn't have voted for it. And one of the provisions regarding registering to vote was an injunction was issued, Mr. Speaker, because there was lack of vetting. So maybe that is the way that things get properly vetted and should be properly vetted. And it starts with the ballot language all the way down, Mr. Speaker. So let's not make it more difficult for the citizens to have a voice. I'm not sure the citizens in the state of Missouri really know how things are done in this building, but let's make sure that they can continue to have their voice heard. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion on House Committee Substitute House Joint Resolution 43. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To inquire.
Does the gentleman from St. Francis yield?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you, gentlemen. How you doing today?
Very good. How are you?
Okay. I always call it St. Francois County, but that's okay. We have a lot of French in St. Louis City, so that's in St. Louis County, so I think it should be St. Francois County, but that's okay. I have, the gentleman from Boone was asking you why you couldn't change the order, not the words in the ballot language, but the order that they are there. Why can't you just change the order? Don't change the sentence, just place it at a different location.
To answer your question, I think we've worked hard on this ballot language to keep it there. At this time, I would prefer to keep it the way it is. I do want to bring out one thing. This is the exact same ballot language from last year. So this ballot language has been around for over 365 days. It's the same ballot language we took out of committee last year. So, I mean, I understand that from year to year you get hit with new things, and I understand all that, but it's the exact same language as last year.
Well, what you're saying is that some of us, me, I will admit, did not catch the ballot language that closely last year. But this year, when I saw it on this bill and a number of other HJRs, all of a sudden it like a crowbar sticking in my eyeball. And all of a sudden, it seems so confusing because the HJR is supposed to be changing initiative petition, not citizenship. So that's why I had a problem with the idea of citizenship right at the front of it.
Well, I think why we're putting it in, as I mentioned earlier, since it's really not clarified in the Constitution as it is, there's that one little blurb in Amendment 26, Section 1, thought it was probably a very good chance to also do that at the same time.
Interesting. I'm not quite sure I understand that. Okay, you were saying, though, in your introduction of your piece of legislation, that it's because the citizens want this.
I know in my district I've had numerous people who will call, text, Facebook message me saying, I hate these amendments, I feel like I don't know what's in them, and I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. Actually, many times what they ask me is, how should I vote? And I say, I never tell anybody how to vote, but I will tell you what is in each one to my knowledge and how I'm going to vote. But I hear that frustration from a lot of them in my district every day. I don't know if you've heard any of that in your district where they feel like they don't know what's fully in them, because as we said, like Amendment 3 was 73 pages, I think that's correct, or it's real close to the number, and you know, they got 50 words, and that happens a lot, and I think they feel like they're being taken advantage of.
Well, I'll tell you, you're talking about citizens contacting you. I've been contacted by a large number of citizens. And at the committee, we heard from, I don't know how many citizens who sent in their remarks dealing with this HJR and others. And there was a large crowd who stayed for 4 hours to tell us their position on this HJR and others, and they were opposed to it.
I had some in my district who actually sent me emails who were opposed to this HJR at the beginning, and then once I explained that all it does is put it on the ballot and the people get to decide, they were like, okay, I didn't understand it that way. So in other words, I get to vote on this and decide if we make this change. I said yes, and so far everybody has been, okay, that seems fair.
I have a simple question. What if it does unluckily make it to the ballot and the citizens, as I believe will do, reject it? Will this end the idea of coming back and again of trying to tell the citizens they don't understand anything and that we in the legislature are so super smart that we will beat them over the head until they accept our wisdom?
I cannot speak for 163 representatives. I know for me, if this does get on the ballot and they vote it down, then I think they will have spoken to me. But other representatives may have other ideas, other ways they think this should be looked at, so I can't speak for them.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that piece of information. I was always wondering about that because this legislature has had in the past of telling the citizens when they pass something that they didn't know what they were doing, and we know better, and we keep trying to get them to change what they did. So thank you very much for that response. It's important to understand that. I must tell you that this legislation gives me heartburn, because it is, in a sense, almost saying that almost 100 years, not quite, but 100 years of Missouri history, where Missourians who have felt the need to make changes to our Constitution and laws because the legislature refused to do it, that they then would go through that process of putting something on the ballot to try to get something else done. And I do applaud you for reducing that a ridiculous 2/3 percentage for approval and moving to the 60, which I think is still too high. But I do applaud you for at least doing that. I am upset, as a gentleman from Boone said, that we did not have adequate time to think about those changes when they were all of a sudden presented to us the day of executing this bill out. I understand the process, but I wanted more time because I did have amendments that I was going to work on. Because number one, I didn't know what we were going to exec and what was going to be exec out. So I didn't know what to work on until it was almost too late to try to get everything to everybody in sufficient time so they could see what was happening and what I was proposing. Yes, sir?
And Jim, I will remind you, and I think you know this already, but it doesn't touch statutory. You mentioned laws, overturning laws a while ago. This will not touch anything statutory. Statutory stays the same. This is only
for the
constitutional. So
right.
We are not, I don't want anybody to believe we're trying to change anything with statutory, because I know you know that, but you mentioned statutory
right.
a while ago. We're only touching the Constitution.
Well, I was just trying to emphasize that we in the legislature, I say we, not necessarily me. The legislature has done that in the past, and that's what I'm trying to get at and trying to make sure that we all understand.
Oh, I understand that.
So thank you very much, gentlemen, for accepting my inquiry. I always enjoy talking to you because you're from one of my favorite counties. It's St. Francois, so I'm very happy about that. Mr. Speaker, I would like to offer an amendment to this piece of legislation.
The gentleman from St. Louis County, please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I have sent forth to the city clerk an amendment for this bill, and I did send it in a timely manner, and I made sure that it got there well in advance of our meeting today. It is title .03H.
And do you move for its adoption?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment really and truly just is clarifying some things. It will affect only page 2 of the document, the entire document, but it's only on page 2, following line 9. And it basically says that as Section A of this act shall take effect at the end of 30 days after the election, at which at least 60% of the votes cast there are in favor of such repeal and reenactment. I believe that this helps clarify and avoids confusion, even though the title, I feel, is very confusing. I would like to move it, and I would entertain any questions that I may have.
The gentleman from St. Louis County has moved for the adoption of the amendment ending in .03H as House Amendment 1. Further discussion. Gentleman from St. Francis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On this amendment, there's two concerns I have. One, I'm not sure it would technically be legal to change until it's changed officially, you can't change the threshold for one particular issue. I'm not sure you can do that. And second, I do believe that the people have said it right now, so I think it should go through at the normal one that is right now a simple majority, because all they're deciding is a simple question. Do we raise that majority? And I think it should go through that way, and I would ask people to vote down this amendment.
Further discussion. Gentleman from St. Louis County, Meredith District.
St. Louis City, Mr. Speaker. Speak on the bill.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Really, this isn't that complicated. This constitutional amendment would say that in order to amend our Constitution, we should have to have a 60% threshold to pass. If we believe that's true, this should have a 60% threshold to pass. Otherwise, we create a situation where This passes by, say, 50.1%. 4 years later, or 10 years later, voters change their minds. They realize they didn't like that decision, and they go to amend it again and go back. That might pass by 59%, except it wouldn't pass. So even if more voters then had voted to undo this than had voted to do it, not just more voters, but a higher percentage of voters by a lot, the smaller majority would win out. Now, I think that highlights some of the problems with this plan itself, but we'll get to that later. Simple fact is, if we think this should be the case, let's make it the case on this. That way we don't end up in that situation if voters want to undo it at a higher threshold than it took them to do it. I would also add to the concerns about whether we are able to add a mechanism like this. The fact is we've done that before, not this specific mechanism, but we frequently put triggers in place to say that something only takes effect in the event that some other circumstance or thing is met. It's what we do on bills all the time with Section 2s and things like that. We pass the bill, but we say it only goes into effect if this other thing is met. I think it's worth us saying, let's do that here, since it makes us consistent with what we're trying to do. For that reason, I'd ask the body to support the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion on House Amendment 1. Representative from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to inquire of the gentleman from St. Francois.
This is the gentleman from St. Francis Shield.
I do.
Please proceed.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you. You heard the phrase, what's good for the goose is good for the gander?
I have.
Would you apply that here?
Not necessarily, because to go back to what the gentleman was saying a while ago, under that case, one thing we're not trying to do is go back and say Amendment 3 could be undone still by the 50% majority. If this were to pass, that goes both ways. And what I'm saying, if this were to pass, anybody who tried to undo Amendment 3, it would have to, if this were to pass, it would have to be undone with a 60% vote or higher. So I think you can look at this thing both ways, and I don't agree with it. I think we go under the current rules, and I think all past ones, the ones I liked and didn't like, are still held accountable under their current rules until this passes, and then they're under those new rules, and I think it should remain that way.
Well, and I can appreciate your position on that. However, I would tend to agree with the gentleman from St. Louis County, in that kind of keeping along those same line of thought, right? So good for the goose, good for the gander. If you think this is what it requires, then maybe we should stick to that.
If we were trying to do something, we would exempt all other ones and say they could be overturned by a simple majority. We're not trying to do that at all. We're going with the simple majority that's in place right now, and anything that's undone in the future, if this were to pass, would have to be undone with a higher threshold. Things that maybe you may like, maybe I don't like, and that's part of, if this were to pass, that we live with and you live with, and I think it's a fair way to do it.
And while I respect that opinion, I also would say that also has, it's a double-edged sword. Like you said, it would also impact stuff that perhaps you like that I don't. So, but to your earlier point, you mentioned statutory. You several times, it doesn't affect the statutory stuff. Why is it that people don't pass things through the statutory way?
Well, I think we both know that question is they're afraid that the legislature may come in and undo it at some point.
Right.
But there's been things that show that hasn't happened. I think that's more of a fear-mongering somewhat. Right to work was passed as statutory. It was undone at the ballot, and we have never taken it back again. Well, so I think the fear that they're going to come right back into the legislature and do it. But if we were to make a mistake, maybe in good meaning we passed a statutory reform, we find out, oh, there were some real mistakes in it, then they would be able to correct it if it was causing harm.
And I think to the point you just made, I think there are other reasons why we didn't go back and do it, and that's largely because 70%, it was blocked by approximately 70%, 69 points.
So the people spoke.
So the people spoke, right. And the idea that you're going to go back and overturn the will of the people when 70% of the people said no, I think there's other reasons for that. Would you agree?
So what you're saying is if it passed at 51%, maybe there would be more of an appetite. I don't think I would necessarily disagree with that. But if it passed at 70, there wouldn't be, because they spoke pretty clearly. If they spoke at 60, I think it'd be the same thing. So I think we're looking at those same kind of thresholds. I don't disagree with what you're saying there.
And I also think you'd probably run the risk of maybe, particularly when you get to tighter districts, some folks who voted that way maybe won't be here anymore. Would you agree with that?
I mean, I can't speak to that, but I could possibly happen.
Sure. Okay. Well, I appreciate your perspective on it, but I'm going to disagree with you, and I would ask that the body support the amendment. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion on House Amendment 1, House Committee Substitute House Joint Resolution 43. Seeing none, gentleman from St. Louis County, you're welcome to renew your motion.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. A number of very interesting things were said about this, my amendment. I will tell the body that when the Founding Fathers wrote up that U.S. Constitution that the gentleman from St. Francois liked, they changed the rules on approval. So we can do that too. Mr. Speaker, if I could get 5 members standing, I would like a roll call vote on this. Our first roll call vote of the year for a piece of legislation.
Gentlemen, I see 5 members standing. You'll have your roll call vote.
Thank you very much. I urge the body to support this amendment because it shows the people in Missouri, the citizens, that we will respect their opinion. And if we're trying to change the rules, we're going to have to abide by the same rules. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from St. Louis County has renewed his motion for the adoption of House Amendment 1 to House Committee Substitute to House Joint Resolution 43. A roll call vote has been requested. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Mr. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. Finally, has everybody voted? Mr. Clerk, please close the board and tally the vote. By your vote of 47 yea, 106 nay, you have failed to adopt House Amendment 1. Further discussion on House Committee Substitute House Joint Resolution 43. Gentleman from St. Louis City.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To inquire the bill sponsor.
Does the bill sponsor yield?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you, gentlemen. Hey, so this is an interesting topic to me and has been since it was first brought up a few years ago. And I will tell you, to be honest, my initial reaction was, yeah, it makes sense that the Constitution's harder to change, right? And I think a lot of people have that gut reaction to it. And so it took me some time to process this one and figure out where I would land on it. But would you say it's fair to say that our state constitution is different than like the U.S. Constitution?
Well, yes, because the U.S. Constitution is much older. Our last one was written in 1945. I would agree with that, but I don't agree that it should be an ever-expanding document, because I think we have some things in there that I approve of, such as bingo, but I'm not sure bingo should be in the state constitution as an example.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with that one. I think you and I probably both agree that it shouldn't be in the Constitution. But it had to be, of course, because of other things in the Constitution. And then we as a legislature sent it to voters to put in the Constitution, right?
Correct.
Okay. I guess, though, where I struggle is with bingo, as an example, raising the threshold to 60% would actually make it harder for us to take it out of the Constitution, wouldn't it?
I think I said that a while ago, that when they talked about what's good for the goose is good for the gander, this also makes it things that you may like and things that I may not like, excuse me, in the Constitution, it would be more difficult to take them out with a higher threshold, yes.
Right, well, with bingo specifically, why is that a good thing?
Well, I think what I'm looking at is going forward, not backward at this point. I think we have to look forward and say, are we going to continue to let money from outside interests, and we know some of that money does come in. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but I would say it's actually arguably less than what comes into the campaigns for the people that are in this building. But
and from out of state, I'm not sure if I agree with that. But anyway, at this point, I think Missourians feel like they're being hoodwinked, let's say, at sometimes, and aren't given everything that's in it. And I think we need to move that threshold.
So obviously, I strongly disagree with that premise and would say Missourians feel like they're getting hoodwinked by us. Well, really by you all, I should say. By the folks in this building that time and time again have said, oh, we saw what voters voted for, now we're going to go and undo it. And that's why we've seen an increase in turning toward constitutional amendments instead of statutory changes at the ballot, because when voters do statutory changes at the ballot, this legislature comes in and says, we know better and we're going to undo it. So they realized, well, I guess we have to amend the Constitution so that we can essentially pass what should be a statute, but where if the legislature wants to change it, we, the voters, get a say on that.
But let's remember this. All this does is put it on the ballot for them to decide. So we're going to the people. We're letting them decide. They may decide I'm wrong. And if they do, so be it.
Sure, and that's where I do think it's relevant, the conversation you had earlier with the gentleman from Boone, about the first thing in this being not really about the issue that this amendment is about, and it being about something that, as you acknowledge, is already the law, and that being the question of citizens only get to vote in Missouri, right?
Correct.
And I mean, you said yourself it's a clarification, I believe, of the law in order to move this along, I think is how you put it.
And to make sure it isn't then enshrined in the Constitution. If I've missed it, point it out to me, but I think Amendment 26, Section 1, as I researched, it was the only place I could find reference to that.
Meaning it's already in the Constitution?
No, because it doesn't say that. I think I read it a while ago, and I'll read it again. It says, the rights of citizens of the U.S. who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied. Okay?
Yes,
and
citizens.
So we want to clarify that, put some clarification to exactly what we mean by that, and make sure it's in there.
So is it your opinion that right now, if we don't pass this, non-citizens can vote?
No.
Okay. So this doesn't actually change anything currently?
Again, it's clarification language.
Okay. So I guess where I think it's really important to stress that is I don't think it's any secret that's what we call ballot candy. It's something to put on the ballot to have voters look at the first bullet point, which, as you've said, is not really the point of this. The point of this is the 60% threshold. But you put the first thing on the ballot, something that voters think, oh my gosh, that's not already true? Well, I got to vote for that. That's what that's about. And that's where this whole line that you keep giving of, well, don't worry, we're just going to send it to voters so that they can weigh in on it, feels a little disingenuous. Because if you really meant that, you would just be putting this question to voters to decide of the 60% threshold. Do you understand how it feels that way to many of us?
Not really. I'm just going to say we're going to disagree on that point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to get back to bingo. Do you think it's a good idea for it to be harder for us as a state to change the rules about bingo?
If I had my druthers, no.
This is your bills. You've got your druthers.
Well, I really don't, because I think we have to clean it up going forward. Let's just put it that way. I'm not going to get into the backward. But
and you said going forward, but
are there things that have passed that I don't like that are in the Constitution that you may and some of the other members of my caucus may not like? Yes. But they were voted on by the people at that point under the threshold that was there then. We're looking at the threshold going forward, and that only.
And I hear you continuing to say we're just looking forward, not backward. But the reality is amending the Constitution is always looking backward. It is changing what has been in our Constitution. And anytime we want to take something out of the Constitution, you can't do that without looking at history, right? You can't just look forward at a document like the Constitution. You have to actually look backward as well at the history of that document, right?
So what is it you're wanting to take out of the Constitution?
Well, there are a lot of things I would be interested in taking out of the Constitution, which is why we have an amendment process to do that, right?
And this would not change it. We'd still have an amendment process to do that.
Right. But you're changing the threshold so that it's harder to change what went in at a lower threshold. And the point of our Constitution from its inception is, unlike the U.S. Constitution, it simply requires a majority of voters to change. Unlike the U.S. Constitution, it was intended to be something that voters can simply say, we want to add something, we want to get rid of something, we want to tweak something, and they can do so without us, right? That's the point of our state constitution.
You said I'm changing it. I'm not doing anything. I'm putting something
This is your
on the
bill, right?
If it goes on the ballot, the people will decide if we're going to change it.
Right, it only goes on the ballot because you're proposing it and saying it's a good idea.
To give them a voice to see what they say.
Are you neutral on this? You don't know whether it's a good idea?
I'm in favor of the bill, but I'm taking
That's
it to
my
the people.
point.
All I'm doing is taking it to the people.
That's fine. And you know what, gentlemen, we'll have lots of other bills where I suggest, hey, rather than us voting on this ourselves, let's send it to the vote of the people. And guess what I'm going to hear from all of you? No, we know better. We can make this decision ourselves. What I see happening is if the people wanted this change, they have a ballot initiative process to change it. The people haven't expressed the desire to do that. And if they did, they'd probably do it in an honest way, not actually trying to say, not making it look like they're making it so non-citizens can't vote, something that's already true.
I've had many citizens express, as I told earlier, some of their concerns with it to me.
Interesting. Well, I'm going to look backwards some more because I think that's important in order to know how this will play out in the future. Is it your belief that things that have passed with less than a 60% margin shouldn't be in the Constitution?
Depends on what it is. I think I can't answer that question. It's too broad.
Well, let me give you some examples. Just about every change we've had to gambling in this state has been with less than a 60% majority. We wouldn't have casinos. Where is that one? Casinos. Games of chance at casinos was 53.9% in 1994. Do you think we shouldn't have casinos?
I don't know where I stand on that. I think we may get a chance to vote on that later this year.
Would if this had been the law?
I don't remember how I voted on that. Am I opposed to having gambling in Missouri? No, I think we need to regulate it.
Yeah, but what I'm asking is if your 60% threshold had been the law, we wouldn't have casinos, right?
We don't know that for sure either because they may have put more money behind the effort because they're polling constantly, so we don't know what they're going to get to.
It was 53.9%.
We don't know how much money they put behind it.
I mean, it was a lot of money behind it. I think you know that as well as I do. How about boats and moats? That was 55.5%. That was allowing the casinos that are on water. Again, we wouldn't have them if it had been a 60% threshold. And I assure you, they put a lot of money into legalizing gambling. How about the constitutional right to farm? Do you remember that one in 2014? Wasn't that long ago. Right to farm?
Okay.
You know what that passed by?
I think you're going to tell me.
50.1%. Do you think that shouldn't have made it into the Constitution because it didn't have 60%?
I don't think it's my place to go through each of these amendments right now and try to decide if I want them or not. All I'm trying to do is move forward on what I think we should do in the future.
Yes, but again, you can't look at what the future should be without knowing what it has been in the past. If we can't look backwards and say what would have passed and what wouldn't have passed, how can we predict what the future looks like? You only can look into the future by understanding history, correct?
I understand the part about history, but we don't know all the particulars about those movements at that time. And if this had been the law of the land or in the Constitution at that time, we don't know what would have transpired.
You think somehow if 60% had been the margin for these to pass, that something that passed with 50.1% would have gotten 10% more to pass?
They may have waited another year or two to put it on the ballot and done some work, grassroots work around the state to try to get to the margin that it would needed at that time if it was 60%.
How about the charity bingo membership rule in 2018? You know, we tweaked that, sent it to the people and said, we want to tweak the rules about charity bingo. Do you think there would have been a grassroots effort for years that would have taken a 52% majority to a 60% majority?
I can't answer that question.
Do you think bingo gets that much attention?
I know some people are pretty passionate about it. I have a Elks Lodge in my area who has a huge bingo night, so...
You understand how that feels a little disingenuous? Like, let's be honest. Changing the rules about bingo, tweaking them, is something that we need to be able to do. We might not get a 60% because it's kind of confusing, but you're raising it to a threshold that would make it hard for people to do.
And they could always go to the statutory, too. It would still be...
No, you can't with bingo. That's why it had to go to the Constitution. It's in the Constitution. We can only tweak it. What about the marijuana laws in our Constitution from medical marijuana and more recently? Those are dense and detailed regulatory structures, right, in our Constitution. What happens if 5 years from now we realize that the federal laws around marijuana have changed, and we need to tweak those. Now we have to have a 60% majority just to tweak details in the Constitution?
And your point is?
My point is, how is that a good thing? How does that make sense?
Are you saying you're opposed to those two amendments?
Oh, I had mixed feelings on both of them, to be honest, but I generally supported moving in that direction, and I know that voters went that direction because they were afraid the legislature would undo it if they went in the statutory direction, as the legislature has kept doing. But now that those are in there, we know that they're likely to need changes over time because they're detailed. They're very detailed and complicated. And the world surrounding drug laws in our country is changing over time. So isn't it important that we be able to change our Constitution with changing times like that?
Gentlemen, you and I aren't going to agree on all this. I still think we need to, you keep looking backward, I'm looking forward. We're not going to agree on the direction we need to go.
Yeah, again, you can't look forward without knowing what happened in the past. One last one. Do you know the Hancock Amendment?
I do.
Do you know that it only passed with 55% of the vote? Do you think that it shouldn't have made it in because it didn't have 60?
I believe it passed at the threshold they had at that time, is what I believe.
Yeah. Sure. So with any of these that passed with 50%, 51%, to undo them or change them in the future, you think it should take a 60% majority to change them?
You went through just the ones that were clear there, and I understand that. You look through, there's many, many, many who are above the 60% threshold.
Here, I've got the number. I added these up a little bit before we started here.
I've got them too. I think at this
60
point,
since 1945 would not have passed out of 132, so almost half of them didn't reach the 60% threshold. Almost half of the amendments to our Constitution since it was first passed in 1945 would not have happened. And yet you're saying if we want to undo those or change those, we should now have to have a higher threshold than they needed to pass them?
which means we would have still passed how many?
72.
That's a lot of changes to our
agreed.
Constitution.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting this would bar all changes. But there are a whole lot of changes that are already in our Constitution that we would need a higher threshold to undo.
And I think
how
you
does
and
that
I
make
are
sense?
going to disagree on how large our Constitution should be, probably.
Well, actually, we might agree with that. The reality is it is here now. And if we want to even take things out of it, we shouldn't be making it hard.
Gentlemen, your time has expired. Further discussion on House Committee Substitute House Joint Resolution 43. Gentleman from Boone. Green, I'm sorry.
Mr. Speaker, to inquire of the sponsor.
Does the bill sponsor yield?
I do.
Boy, I like it when somebody else messes up instead of me. Gentlemen, I'm glad you're handling this bill. I've always found you to be a very serious individual, and I think what you brought before us is some excellent legislation. But just kind of refresh my memory here a little. You were talking about the length of letters we can put on the ballot.
Correct.
And that was what? What was that number?
I think it's 50 is the number.
Now, not going too far back, so I don't, challenge my mind, but recently we passed recreational marijuana, correct?
That is correct.
Do you remember the length of that measure? Do you remember pages?
73, I think, was the total pages on it.
Okay, so 30, all right, but it was lengthy, whether it be, yes. Do you really feel like that we gave the voters a true sense of what was in that legislation in those 50 letters?
I do not, and I think that happens quite often, gentlemen. I hear it from people in my district that they're sitting there going, that's why they're contacting me. I'm sure other members of this body have been contacted, and they're saying, help me because you're up there in this. What is actually in this language, because there's not enough information there many times for them.
Can you give me a kind of a rundown of everything that was in that, you say 70 some odd pages?
Well, maybe it's less. It's large, very large document. And here's the thing it had in there. It had all the expungement part, and there are going to be some issues with the expungement when some of these prosecutors have rolled charges together. somebody that's a lawyer, not me, and there's many of them in here, could probably speak on that. I think we got a gentleman looking at that right now. There's so many different parts in it. The part where you cannot, it passed at a simple majority, but if you want to keep it out of your local community, you have to pass that at 60%. And in fact, that is in it, and most people didn't realize that was in it. The gentleman who testified in committee, when asked that question, reluctantly gave that information at that point.
Wasn't there even, I remember reading maybe a new state agency or sub-agency?
I think you're correct.
Within there. What does that have to do with marijuana?
It had all kinds of things in there that really didn't do it. They basically added a lot of things to our state with that.
So when we only have 50 letters, it's really kind of hard to give the average citizen a sense of what they're voting for, isn't it?
It is. And up here, we have hearings, we have floor debate. It has to go to the other side of the building for floor debate. So we really discuss those things in length, whereas sometimes I'm all for keeping initiative petition for the Constitution, but I think sometimes we the people, feel like they've been hoodwinked or not told the whole story.
And during our discussion here, I think one of our learned colleagues from across the aisle talked about how we were pushing this so quickly. Isn't that really kind of making your point on the initiative petition? You have something in your measure here about so many days and what have you, to kind of give people an opportunity to get exposed to what's in there. I mean, I think don't you have something in there related to that you have to get out into the different areas so that the local media and the local people can come and inquire and gain more knowledge regarding these measures?
Yes, I do. What originally we were going to look at changing the signatures in the bill we had last year. A lot of people said, you're going to make it too difficult. They can't get that many signatures. I said, fine, we won't do that. But the people in all 8 congressional districts, because when they gather signatures right now, they basically only go into a few of the congressional districts. They don't go to southeast Missouri. They don't go to northwest Missouri. They don't go to northeast Missouri to gather those signatures. Those people feel like we don't matter. They go to Springfield, Columbia, Kansas City, St. Louis, very rarely even get down to Cape Girardeau to gather signatures. And this would require you go into all 8 and give people have a chance to have their voice heard and submit testimony, and the Secretary of State would be in charge of that. So we're trying to give them a greater voice and give them a chance also to find out everything that's in that.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'll be voting for your measure. Thank you.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Randolph.
To speak on the bill and to inquire of the bill sponsor.
Please speak on the bill, and does the bill sponsor yield?
I do.
Please proceed.
So I appreciate you bringing this bill. It is absolutely important that we are able to get broad representation whenever we want to try to change the state constitution. Is that really what you're wanting to do?
It is.
And if we can get broad representation, 50% or whatever it is, if it's broad representation across the state, that's really the goal of this, to make sure it's not just one portion of the state, not just one segment of the state, but a broad representation across the state. And your approach to that is to make sure that at least 60%, and that would give you would require basically by any demographics that you're probably going to get fairly broad representation.
I could not agree more. And then also with the portion that the gentleman from Green had a while ago, is it helps us to also get out to all parts of the state. I realize that a vast majority of our population live in St. Louis, Kansas City, Columbia, and Springfield. But I also believe the people in southeast, northeast, and northwest Missouri want to be heard too. They're very important, and they're all Missourians, and I think it's important that we let their voices be heard too.
Yeah, citizens of the 6th Congressional District, they want to be heard. Citizens of the 8th Congressional District, they want to be heard because they want broad representation. They want to have for whatever they're doing to have an impact. If you're going to change your state constitution, it should be at least 50% of across the state, or in a broad representation voting for it, and 60%. If you don't have anything that represents representation across the state is the method that you're employing. do you remember how, like with the marijuana amendment that just passed, what the voter turnout for the state was?
It was low.
Because maybe I'm wrong, but I think it was 47%, and it passed with 53%. Right? Wasn't that what it was? 53.2 or something?
That is correct. It's
and so if you have
something.
47% of 53%, that means 26% of the voters of Missouri passed the medical marijuana, and 38 pages plus went into the state constitution. And I don't think we want that. I don't think that's really what even the people that voted for it, when they hear what went in there, they're like, wow, I didn't know that was there. I didn't think that was there. Because you can't read that. There's all kinds of issues with that. But we do want to be able to maybe, as some people even on the other side of the aisle have said, we'd like to be able to edit that too. And, that is an issue that we have to make sure we can still have the opportunity to get with broad representation, be able to edit a mistake that someone, that maybe has passed into our Constitution. And I think that is, a concern. But I'll be voting for your bill because we need to address an initiative petition, and this is one mechanism to do it. And I appreciate your effort on this, and I'll be voting for it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Further discussion on House Committee Substitute House Joint Resolution 43. Lady from St. Louis County.
Thank you. To inquire.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
Please proceed.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to talk to you today. I have two questions about this particular resolution. The first is, if I understand correctly, it would take a majority of legislators to send an initiative petition to the people of Missouri.
That is correct.
And we want to, a majority of us will send, in your viewpoint, an initiative petition that is asking the people of Missouri to require 60% in order to pass an initiative petition. Is that correct?
We are asking them if they think 60% should be the number.
But I mean in the future.
That is correct. We are asking them if they think that is what it should be.
So again, goose and gander, if we need 60% for the people of Missouri to pass an initiative petition, why did you not put in your proposed legislation a 60% threshold for us? Do we somehow have more wisdom than the people of Missouri?
No, we're under the current rules that we have right now. We're following the current rules.
But the
people will decide if we change those rules.
But in those rules, will we have a higher threshold when we are sending things to the people of Missouri?
No,
hold on a second. It's my questioning. Why didn't you include that?
Because anything we send to them would have to be past that same threshold. All we're changing is the threshold that the people would meet, and they get to decide if that's an appropriate threshold.
You're not understanding me, sir.
No, I understand.
No, you're not. Because we're saying the people of Missouri need to have a threshold of 60%, but we only need a threshold of 50 plus 1.
That's because we're not passing anything. All we're doing is putting it on the ballot for the people.
We are passing something.
We are not passing.
No, hold on. This is my questioning.
Okay.
I submit very, very strongly that we do not require anything of the state of Missouri that we do not require of ourselves. Thank you. To speak, sir.
Please proceed.
Ultimately, this is about power, folks. It's about who has power and who we trust. And I need to quote the greatest political philosopher I have ever known, Doris May Pfeiffer, my mother. When we in the state of Missouri passed a constitutional amendment to take away the right of same-sex couples to get married, my mother, a good Southern Baptist, told me, I am not sure if I agree with same-sex marriage, but I do know this: you never, ever, ever vote to take away rights. And by golly, she was one of that minority that voted against that initiative petition. I am very, very proud of my mother, and I continue to think about that every day here. We never vote to relinquish rights, my friends. And any law that creates a supermajority undercuts our right to vote. And I believe it is a step towards tyranny. And if we take away the rights of others, who is going to protect us when our rights are threatened? I've heard a lot of arguments today, and the representative from the city of St. Louis stole my word, disingenuous. This initiative petition will not make any difference about whether or not people from, quote, out of state want to give us legislation. It's not in that initiative petition. It's not going to make a bit of difference if people don't vote in the kind of quantities that we want them to. I remember last year, after Medicaid expansion came through and won on the initiative petition, and one of our representatives stood up and tried to make the argument that it was illegitimate because only a majority of the people who voted on that particular day voted for Medicaid expansion. But you know, folks, if we take that as a valid argument, the elections of every single one of us is invalid. In a democracy, the people who vote are the ones who decide a particular election. These are sacred rights, absolutely sacred rights. And I implore you all, do not say that somehow the state of Missouri is not smart enough to figure out what we need as a state, and yet we here in the legislature are held to a different standard. Thank you.
Further discussion? Lady from Platte.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From a microphone, not my own.
Please proceed.
To inquire of the bill sponsor.
This is a gentleman from St. Francis. Yield.
I do.
Please proceed.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Good morning.
So what I'm curious about is the portion of this HJR that deals with the public forum, requiring the Secretary of State to hold a public forum for community feedback about a citizen-led initiative petition. Am I understanding that correctly?
You're understanding correctly.
Excellent. So I'm curious what the purpose is of including that. Like, kind of what was the thought process? Can you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, the thought process is right now, the signature gathering, I was going to change it. I think we iterated it a while ago to a higher threshold, thinking they would have to go to all 8 congressional districts. Everybody said, well, now you're trying to make it impossible to pass, which is not what we're attempting to do here, and you'd have to be too expensive to gather that many signatures and validate them and so on. So at that point, decided I still feel very strongly that the voices of Northeast, Northwest, Southeast Missouri, and other parts outside of the major metropolitan areas should be heard. So in doing that, we wanted to do this so those people would have a voice and would have the opportunity to have discussion on anything as important as a constitutional amendment.
Excellent. Okay, so so the outcome that you're expecting, I assume, is, it sounds like, more transparency, more opportunity for folks to have their voices heard.
That's what my hope is.
Excellent. So I'm curious why the language specifies that this requirement is only for citizen-led initiative petitions rather than citizen-led initiative petitions that create a constitutional amendment as well as legislative-led constitutional amendment changes. Why for one and not the other?
I don't know if we agree on that because I think what I read it as, it says voters in each congressional district shall have the opportunity to review and comment upon all initiative petitions proposing amendments to the Constitution following with the petition with the Secretary of State. So what's your take on that?
Well, to me it sounds like if an initiative petition is brought up by the people of Missouri, that is what's included, but not a constitutional amendment proposed by the legislature. Because initiative petition, if I'm not mistaken, is specific to the citizen-led initiative petition process, correct?
I think it includes all HJRs that even come from it, because they're initially an initiative petition that's sent from us to the people, and that's why we put in there upon all initiative petitions proposing amendments to the Constitution. It says all.
But initiative petition is specific to the citizen-led. It's the petition portion. What I'm asking is if the legislature votes to put an HJR on the ballot for a vote of the people, why is that not subject
I think they're both subject to it.
I disagree with that, gentlemen, because initiative petition, again, is specific to a citizen-led initiative petition process. It does not encapsulate what we do here in the legislature.
It says upon all of them, and I think
all initiative petitions. So, initiative petition does not include everything.
So when we send it to the voter, what is it?
We send it to the voter.
If we as a legislature
it's a
send it to the voters,
constitutional amendment proposed by the legislature. It's a joint resolution. It's not an initiative petition.
I think it still falls under those same guidelines. That's my opinion.
It does not. Mr. Speaker, to offer an amendment that ends in .02H. It has been filed and distributed. I move for its adoption.
The lady from Platt has offered amendment ending in .02H as House Amendment 2. Further discussion on House Amendment 2, lady from Platt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'm really glad to hear that the gentleman believes that his current language allows this Secretary of State public forum to include anything that is proposed by the legislature. Unfortunately, that is not the case in his current language. So what I'm proposing here is that we clarify, because it sounds like we're doing a lot of that here today, I want to clarify that the Secretary of State would also need to hold a public forum for not just citizen-led initiative petitions, but also for any constitutional amendment proposed by the legislature. So the language, again, just clarifies that amendments to the Constitution be submitted to voters by initiative petition or by the General Assembly not less than 15 days before the measure. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Further discussion on House Amendment 2. Gentleman from St. Francis.
Actually, I think we already do this, but I would like a second to study this, because I'm actually not opposed in any way for both of them being done that way. I just want to make sure. I haven't had really time to look at this. I think it already does it, but if it were to make it more clear, I actually would not be opposed. I think ours should go to and should be done. We want transparency, as you said earlier. So before I can speak on it, I am going to take a minute to look at this amendment for just a second.
Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd actually like to inquire of the gentleman from the 131st.
Does the gentleman from the 131st... Gentleman from Green, do you yield?
I most certainly do.
Please proceed, gentlemen.
No. And you do it again? Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
He's so cerebral. He was in another world, so we got to forgive him.
Yeah. Maybe it reverses what it was done. I don't know. I just had a couple quick questions from something you said earlier. So yes. You mentioned you're talking about 50 words. Can you expand on that, please?
Well, I believe the bill sponsors was talking about the total amount of letters. I believe it was letters. Maybe it's words that you can put on a ballot language. Kind of limits down what you can say, particularly when the measure is so many pages.
So I gather what I gather from that is that it's hard to put everything into a small amount of text, essentially.
I think would be something we could agree on.
Okay. Then do you think it wise to duplicate language or restate the already current law in a small, since you only have 50 words?
Well, the idea is to get this in going forward. That's the only way you can have it happen. If we accept your premise here, well then we would never be able to look at any kind of adjustments to how we do initiative petitions. So I understand where you're coming from. I applaud you for the angle that you're taking, but the bottom line comes down to this. If we're going to improve the process, we're going to have to pass this and thus by that improve the system.
Well, I can tell you that, so I think ironically, I think there are things that we can all agree upon in this process, and I think the problem that we have is that some of those things aren't really considered. For example, I know that the gentleman from St. Louis City has basically rails upon electronic signatures, right? I mean, I think if at the end of the day, there's probably an area, a common ground we can find some common ground on, and I think that would be one of those situations. So, when you're going out to some of these areas, when you're trying to collect signatures, basically making it so that electronic signatures are...
Just went through the line.
I know. Going back. Go ahead.
He's a freshman. I mean, forgive him.
It happens.
I'm sorry, we've broken your train of thought there.
That's all right.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. So, but electronic signatures, that would be something that I think would make sense. They can be verified through the Secretary of State. As a matter of fact, that was something that, not that specific point, but the Secretary of State lobbied for reducing the number of signatures based on the fact that it would reduce the cost and perhaps with outside money, some of the things that have been discussed here. So I think that's one of those things that could presumably help that.
Gentlemen, interesting, but not germane to the topic.
Yeah, okay. I would actually, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to speak with the amendment maker, please.
Does the lady from Platt yield?
I do.
All right,
Please proceed.
Thank you. Actually, I commend your efforts here. I would tend to agree. I think at the end of the day, I agree with you, I don't believe that the language is specific with regard to that little niche area. So I'd like you to expand on that if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that the point here is that we're looking for transparency, right? And we're trying to make sure that if we're giving the public an opportunity to give us feedback about something that another citizen created and is pushing across the state, that we can do the same thing for what the General Assembly is proposing. It's that simple. It's just making sure that there's parity between the two and that folks have a voice in every constitutional amendment change, regardless of where it came from.
Yeah, honestly, I think I'd agree with you. I think if it's kind of back to my original point of what's good for the goose is good for the gander, I say the same thing here. So, you know what, I support the amendment, and I encourage the body to as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion. Gentleman from St. Charles County.
To inquire of the amendment maker.
Does the amendment maker yield?
I do.
Please proceed.
Good morning still.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I am doing great. So I see what you're trying to do here, and just wanted to ask you, did this resolution have a hearing that the public could weigh in on?
It did.
Okay, so is there any opportunity for the public to have an electronic recording, such as we have here, in which their comments on something from an initiative petition is submitted?
Yes.
And what would that be?
So when we propose a bill and it gets heard in committee, right, it's an original version of the bill. Once it goes through the committee process, we know there are amendments that happen, there are changes, things change on the floor here like they are today. And so I think it's really important that, yes, while there is a public hearing, during the bill proposal process here in the building, that we give the same attention to the final version of the bill and make sure that the general public really understands that final language that they are going to be voting on.
So I probably stumbled through my question there. I'm not sure you understood. When the initiative petition process happens, outside of this, not an HJR, but an actual initiative petition proposed by the people, is there an opportunity for the public to weigh in which we have that debate, in which we are able to hear the opposing sides?
Are you asking if there's that's what this bill is proposing. That's what the HJR is proposing, that the Secretary of State holds that just for the initiative petition process. But no, it does not exist currently.
And I think that's the point that I'm trying to make here, is that we currently have it here because after we perfect the bill and we third read it, it goes over to the Senate. And then there's a hearing over there as well where the public is able to weigh in yet again on the proposed resolution.
Right, but not necessarily the final language.
That is true, so I understand where you're coming with that. But I just wanted to point out, thank you, lady, to speak on the amendment.
Please proceed.
As the body could hear there, I was just simply pointing out that we already have that opportunity with the hearing process in committee, Mr. Speaker. We have that ability for the public to come in, to weigh in on the resolutions, not once, but twice, because if it is going to get placed on the ballot, it has to not only go through the House and be vetted through the House, but it also has to go through the Senate. And it is that opportunity, Mr. Speaker, that is afforded to all of our citizens that is not afforded to them on the initiative petition process. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Lady from Clay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To inquire of the bill handler.
Does the bill handler from St. Francis yield?
I do.
Please proceed.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Do you have some time to review that language?
I did.
Okay, walk me through. What are you thinking now?
At first blush, looking at it, I don't have a problem. The one problem I have is it's taking out some words I don't think we should say following the following of, because she takes all of 7 and 8 out. And I think we may, there's a couple of words I disagree with in context. I want to make sure that ours are reviewed too. I do also know we have the Joint Committee on Legislative Research. It's headed by one of our senators over there who does this on the ones that we take out. And they hold these in public comment periods in Jefferson City, so they don't go out to all 8 congressional districts. So we do this to a degree already, even though initiative petitions by the people didn't. We were doing this around here with any of ours here in Jefferson City on a joint committee.
Gentlemen, if I can stop you right there. So what I heard you say is if there's a few words that are tweaked, then you could be in support of this amendment?
I think so.
Okay, that's great. Is somebody working on those changes?
Not right now. We were just now trying to get to what we're doing here to making sure there's no words taken out that we don't want taken out.
Okay, sure. And if hopefully somebody's moving on those changes, and I'm happy to inquire of the amendment maker, but I'm happy to hear that you're in support of the idea of this. Because what I heard and what I certainly understand concerns is making sure that all residents that want to weigh into this in the 8 congressional districts have that opportunity not just to review the language, but truly to comment on the language in a public forum. And I think if we're going to extend that invitation, as we should, for initiative petitions, that we should also do it for anything passed by the General Assembly.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
If we accept this amendment, will you be willing to vote for this bill at that point?
So, gentlemen, here's what I can tell you. I think this is a great improvement to your piece of legislation because, once again, what we want to make sure is that Missouri voters have a voice in this process. And
We both agree on that.
I think that's incredibly important.
But would you
Gentlemen,
vote for this bill?
One of the things that I recognize that is incredibly important about our initiative petition process is that it's been used in this state for well over 100 years. Members of both parties have used this when members of the General Assembly are not responding to the needs of the people. And this tool, gentlemen, will once again be used by your side of the aisle once our side of the aisle takes control. So I want to ensure that all Missouri citizens have a right to the initiative petition process. I want to make sure that everybody's able to weigh in. I want to make sure that any proposal, whether it's through the initiative petition process or anything put forward by this General Assembly, is well vetted. And I think that serves everybody well.
So is that a no or a yes?
That was a heck no.
Okay. Thank you, lady.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, to inquire of the amendment maker.
Does the amendment maker yield from?
I do.
Okay,
Please
hi,
proceed.
lady. Did you hear that conversation?
I did.
Okay, and I don't know, I mean, I thought the language was good. Hopefully, if there's anything that's going to be worked out, but I just appreciate you bringing this forward. I think everybody here has the consensus that, let's weigh this before all congressional districts. Let's have a public forum where people can weigh in, they can review, they can comment, they can express those concerns. I think that's a very valid thing for us to do.
And you know, I actually was just informed that the Legislative Review Committee that has been around for about 10 years now was really just utilized for the first time.
Just recently the legalization of marijuana. And I was one of those, you know, that's how I like to spend my interim, is anytime there's a committee going on, I like to log in and see what's going on. And I really respect the gentleman from St. Louis County for pushing that process and making sure that that process took place, because I don't think we always even recognize what we can do in this building. And I thought that was really important. Unfortunately, when a committee convenes like that in the middle of the summer, not a lot of folks know that it's happening.
Right.
And once again, that's why it's so important that we are doing this in every congressional district across the state. All congressional districts, I hear a lot of concern, and I understand those concerns from rural areas that they feel like they don't get a weigh in enough, and that's why I think it's really important to host those forums back there.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Okay. Well, hopefully, I hear a lot of conversations over on the other side. Hopefully they're working out any kinks with the language, but appreciate the conversation, and thanks for bringing this forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Randolph.
Not to speak on the amendment.
Please proceed.
You know, I think we've got to make sure that we're clear on what we're really discussing here. We're not saying that we already have this bill that's here is already going to, it applies to both initiative petitions, those brought forth by the people, but it also affects those that are brought by the general legislature. It's in page 2, line 4, that says that all those constitutional amendments will have to get 60% before they would go into effect. So what I guess what we're talking about here for the good of the body is that they also think that we need to have the same hearing or vetting process. But of course, these already have, all HJRs and SJRs already have a vetting process. It's called House committee hearings and Senate committee hearings, and every person in the state has access to those committee hearings at all times, every member of the congressional district. Since that's not a vote of the people, I understand the amendment. I'm going to be voting no on this amendment. I just don't think it's necessary, and I think it's and it's not going to change the vote of the other side. I'll be voting no on this amendment.
Further discussion on House Amendment 2. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To inquire of the gentleman from St. Charles County.
Does the gentleman from St. Charles County yield? From a microphone other than your own. Please proceed.
I do.
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. How you doing?
Morning.
So you spoke about how we had hearings here in the Capitol, so that would eliminate the need for us to have one in every congressional district. Is that right?
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you since I'm not at my usual microphone. Can I get a little order on the side gallery so I can hear the gentleman?
Would members and guests please keep their voices to a minimum while we debate the bill?
Could you repeat that, please?
Yes, gentlemen. So I said that in an earlier inquiry was your statement that since we have hearings here in this building in Jefferson City, that makes the need to have hearings in all 8 congressional districts, that makes that null and void?
I don't think I was saying that in particular. I was simply saying that we do have that opportunity for people to come to the Capitol in testimony, in hearings, in order to provide that feedback. We do have that back and forth in committee.
Okay.
Whereas with the initiative petition process, we just have the public comment period that is submitted to the Secretary of State, in which we don't have that back and forth.
That's not true. So did you just hear the just prior inquiry where they said that we have Joint Committee on Legislative Research, where it's been in statute for about 10 years now, that every time something goes on the ballot by initiative petition, there's a hearing here in Jefferson City, and we just had that for the first time last year.
I did not hear that.
Well, that's true. Do you think that just because we have a hearing here in Jefferson City, everybody has the means to get here to Jefferson City?
Some people probably not.
Some people probably not. And do you think that those some people probably not deserve a chance to interact with their government?
I think that they are also able to submit comments electronically.
Online?
Yes.
Do you agree that Missouri has problems with broadband?
In some places.
In some places, do you believe that those some places deserve the chance to interact with their government?
I think they still do have the opportunity. If someone is determined enough to make comment, they will find the means to do it.
So only those people that are determined enough matter?
I think everyone has the opportunity to do it, and those who are determined are the ones that will do it.
All right.
If someone is not determined to do it, they won't do it. Plain and simple.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to inquire of the gentleman from Greene County.
Does the gentleman from Greene yield? Gentleman from Greene in the building.
The Owen District.
Gentlemen, the gentleman from Greene does not appear to be here. You have further inquiries or further discussion? Please proceed.
I'd like to inquire of the gentleman from St. Francis.
So does the gentleman from St. Francis yield?
I do.
Please proceed.
Hey, gentlemen, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. So, a couple things. The first thing that I was going to discuss with the gentleman from Greene is it's been talked about a little bit about how we only have 50 words to describe what's in the ballot measure. Do you think that's a problem?
I do. I don't know of a better way to do it, only for this reason, is when you get to, and if probably a lady in here could speak to it much better than I can, but it gets down to some on the ballots. How large you want your ballots when they go in there, and the county clerks and dealing with them. I can't speak to a lot of that, but I know that is one of the issues with it. There is a lady in here could probably speak more to that.
Okay. Is that an issue? So, is that an issue that you want to solve at all?
I'm not trying to in this bill right now. What I'm trying to do strictly in this bill is put it before the people and see if they agree that we need to raise the threshold to 60.
Okay.
So that is a problem we could maybe discuss at a later time, but it's not a problem I'm trying to deal with right now.
Okay. Well, I was just wondering why that made its way into the conversation, if that's not something that you're looking to deal with. So what do you think about the language now? Are you okay with it now? Because, I mean, it sounded like you were okay with it, but you just wanted to make some slight changes. And I mean,
which language are we talking about?
The amendment.
Right now, I'm probably going to ask the body to vote the amendment down, and let's move forward. And, right now, I think we've worked this bill for 3 years actually. We've passed out of the body with this exact same language last year, and at this point, I think I'm going to ask the body to support me on moving forward. That will be up to the body.
So even though we have vetting in this building, and it seems that you acknowledge that it was some issues or that some clarification was needed, even though we had that vetting process, you are going to continue with something that's been going through the same way for the past couple of years?
Well, we have several ways that we can deal with this already, such as and I've got the exact term, judicial review board that we already have that met, I think, in Jeff City. And somebody pointed out they hadn't met regularly, but they did meet on this last one. I think it was headed up by one of our senators.
That's right.
So,
actually, it was headed up by a senator. The request was made by a House member that you happen to be speaking to right now, and it was the first time that it was ever done. It was proposed by a Republican member of this House a decade ago, and it's never been done. We talk about in this very room how the folks never get a chance to talk about initiative petitions proposed by the citizens, but it took me in order to get that done. For the first time.
It was done, correct.
For the first time, and now we're not.
Well, first time in at least 10 years. I don't think it was the first time ever, but it was the first time maybe in 10 years that they had met, I think.
Why would it happen if it wasn't a statute?
Excuse me, don't understand.
It only became a statute 10 years ago in 2014, so why would it happen?
I can't answer why it hasn't met, but what I can answer is it did, and I think that's a good thing.
And you think that's sufficient? There should be a
I
high
think we
bar
have to
for the
continue to
citizens
get
than
out
it
the
is
word
for
to
the
the people.
legislation.
I'm all for transparency, and that's why I put that section in my bill to make sure that they get a little bit more information.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to inquire of the gentleman from Green.
So does the gentleman from Green yield? Gentleman from St. Louis County, gentleman from Green is not present. Do you have additional inquiries or comments on the bill? You may proceed.
I'd like to comment on the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, it's pretty clear here that a lot of arguments are being thrown out. Oh, we can only use so many words. Oh, people get confused. Our Constitution should only be so big. But the clear argument here is the voters passed something we didn't like. We don't like marijuana. We don't like being able to draw fair maps. So let's make the bar a little bit higher so that those things won't be able to pass. I mean, it's pretty clear. I mean, I don't even know if it could be said any clearer. At one point, folks speak with the voice of a group. Oh, we think this and we think that. But there's dozens of proposals out here that are all different and all sneaky in their own way. So I say, Mr. Speaker, if you want to do away with the initial petition process, do away with it. Do away with it. But don't sell the people of Missouri a false bill of goods. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Boone.
Can I inquire from the bill holder, please?
Does a bill holder from St. Francis yield? Do an
I
inquiry.
do.
Gentleman from Boone, you may proceed.
Thanks for having me. You showed concern about the money being spent on these bills. Is there any reason, as far as about petition process and the outside money coming in, how come you didn't address that in this bill?
Well, my concern, when it comes in from various PACs, I don't know if that is the route we want to take, but here's what I'll tell you. I don't think our Constitution should be for sale to the person who can raise the most money from out-of-state interest to try to reshape us. That's my thought process on it. I did not address that in this bill because this bill tries to address it in another matter to say we're going to let the people decide if they want to raise it to 60%.
Do you think because of this bill that you're introducing, there will be less money spent or more?
I don't think I can answer that question. My hope would be there'd be less because they know they have a higher threshold. So some of them who aren't really grassroots, that aren't really from Missourians, and aren't from Missourians who want to see a change in something, they won't come in here and try to redefine Missouri. So that would be my hope, but I don't think I can answer the question for sure.
And so with that notion, in my view, if that was a concern, then we would cinch down super PACs and keep outside money from buying our policies. So it is a concern of mine that you're really not addressing the money issue. So that was just my comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion. Lady from Platte, you're recognized to renew your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just really briefly, I want to make sure that the body understands that, what we're trying to do here is accomplish some transparency. It sounds like, per the conversation I had with the bill sponsor, he supports that transparency aspect. It sounds like maybe the language wasn't perfect, and, we have a solve for that. Also sounds like that's not going to go through. So if I could get 5 members standing, I would like to request a roll call vote.
A roll call has been requested and will be granted. The lady from, you're renewing your motion, ma'am? The lady from Platte has renewed her motion for the adoption of House Amendment 2 to House Committee Substitute to House Joint Resolution 43. A roll call has been requested. All those in favor of adopting House Amendment 2 will signify will vote aye, and those opposed will vote no. Mr. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. Has everybody voted? Mr. Clerk, please close the board and tally the vote. By your vote of 49 yea, 106 nay, you have failed to adopt House Amendment 2. Further discussion on House Committee Substitute House Joint Resolution 43. Gentleman from Laclede.
To inquire the bill handler.
Does the bill handler from St. Francis yield?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you, gentlemen. I've been sitting here listening to this debate on your bill, and one of the issues that came up was the first part of your bill. The first part of your bill not pertaining to the rest of your bill. Do you remember what the first part of Clean Missouri was?
I don't know if I do for sure.
First
Can you
part of
remind me?
Clean Missouri, I think, dealt with lobbyist gifts.
You're right. You're right, it did. First thing was lobbyist gifts and how they were going to take them down.
Evidently I have misspoken. I apologize. Can you tell me what the last part of Clean Missouri was?
I guess lobbyist gifts.
Redistricting.
Oh, redistricting.
Last. Point to my non-topic is something has to be first whenever it becomes on the ballot, whether it's misleading, not misleading. Some of the people in my district had no idea what was first or last on that ballot because of the commercials and everything that was in my district. Not one mention of redistricting in my district. Not one mention.
What I heard from the people in my district was this is going to clean up Jefferson City and get rid of the lobbyist gifts. They knew they didn't even look at the other part of it.
So I meant the first part of the message. I'm sorry. First part of the message. So, and then we talk about the broad representation. Broad representation. How many times in this building have we heard the vote of the people? The vote of the people. You're going against the vote of the people. And it's our job to do and represent those people's votes. Have we heard it before?
A few thousand times.
A few thousand times. Well, on some of these ballot measures, I will argue that I do listen to the vote of my people because all of these issues have failed, and in some instances failed by more than 60% in my district, and more than 60% of every county that touches my district, yet they pass by 50.5, 52.5. So would your version help people in my district?
It would help the people in your district to have a bigger voice, I think.
I would have to agree with that. If you want to talk about broad representation, I think you have to include the entire state. Too many times some of these petitions have passed, and they have failed miserably in my district and every district that attaches to me. So I appreciate your bill, and I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
For further discussion, lady from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I please inquire from the gentleman from St. Louis City, Meredith District?
Does the gentleman from St. Louis City yield?
I do. Thank you.
Proceed.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, lady.
Just wanted to ask you for clarification on what Clean Missouri was all about versus Dirty Missouri.
Sure. Honestly, I think it's really interesting that someone from their side brought this up because I think it's a really important point that he was trying to make that actually makes the opposite point. And that is that Clean Missouri, when it went to the ballot, listed all the things that it did, the reforms that it did, and it put first the very thing that was the biggest change in it, and that was a change to redistricting. And contrary to the gentleman's assertions, if you look at the marketing materials for that went out to people, it was all about ending gerrymandering. It was all about changing redistricting. Now that one passed by 62%. Now what's really interesting is that then this body, specifically the majority in this body, passed what we call Dirty Missouri to undo that. But when they did that, they also added things that were barely changes at all. Mind you, in Clean Missouri passed, lobbyist gifts were not banned yet at all. Clean did that. Well, they made it so the first bullet point was banning lobbyist gifts. Well, they were already banned.
Right, taking
All
it
it
from
did was
$5 down to nothing.
a $5 threshold.
Right.
So the smallest change, without question, in Dirty Mo was this lobbyist gift ban.
Clever.
And they listed that, first on the ballot. So it was the first thing that voters would see when they opened the ballot. I think the gentleman just really nicely showed our point about the deceptive language intended by this ballot initiative, by this HJR, that again, the Republican legislature is writing to trick voters by listing something first that is essentially meaningless to the amendment while putting last the piece that actually makes a difference in here. Now, notably, Clean Missouri passed, as I said, with 62%. Guess how much Dirty Missouri passed with?
Wasn't it
52.
52? So that would not have met the gentleman's threshold.
Isn't
for
that
a
interesting?
constitutional amendment.
So, interestingly, this would actually have made it so that Clean Missouri passed, the one that was actually honest with voters, and Dirty Mo, that lied to voters like this one does, would have failed. And yet, they're trying to do it again right here, with another one to trick voters into making it harder for voters to have their say, and easier for politicians to just do what they want with no accountability.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, lady.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Clay.
Thank you. To inquire of the bill sponsor.
Does the gentleman from St. Francis yield?
I do.
Proceed.
Thank you, gentlemen. How are your legs holding up?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Terrific. So there's been a lot of discussion, and I thank the gentleman from Laclede and the members who were just having a discussion, talking about ballot language. And you have many times alluded to the fact that we only have 50 words to put something on the ballot. And would you agree that in that case, your stance is that we should make the most efficient use of those 50 words as possible?
Yes.
Okay. And then earlier during your discussion with the gentleman from St. Louis County, Windham District, you stated that the primary aim of this piece of legislation to put on the ballot was to increase the threshold of passing a constitutional amendment by IP to 60%.
Oh, to put it before the people and let them decide, yes.
Yes, correct. Okay, thank you. So with that, I have an amendment ending in .7H, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to move for its adoption.
Gentlemen, could you restate your LR number?
Yes, .7H, 0.07H. Thank you.
The gentleman from Clay has moved for the adoption of House Amendment 3. Gentleman from Clay.
Thank you. So all that this amendment does is flip the proposed ballot language in the constitutional amendment to be put on the ballot before the people. Nothing has changed, nothing is removed. However, the bill sponsor has stated that the primary aim of this bill is to raise the threshold to 60%. Followed then by the transparency piece regarding comment periods in all 8 congressional districts, and then the citizenship piece, which has been discussed a tiny amount, but has been sort of tertiary to our conversation here today. So I believe in the issue, in the sake of transparency and efficiency, in making sure that the people know exactly what they're voting on and what the intention of this proposed amendment is, that we adopt this amendment to better reflect the intent.
Discussion on House Amendment 3. Gentleman from St. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak on the amendment.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Mr. Speaker, I believe that the language has been worked on. It was passed out with the exact same language last year. And we've worked on this language for probably 3 years, and I think it's where we want it to be, and I would ask the body to vote down this amendment.
Further discussion on House Amendment 3. Gentleman from St. Charles.
To inquire of the amendment maker.
Does the gentleman from Clay yield?
Yes.
Proceed.
Good afternoon now.
Good afternoon. Is it? Oh, it is.
Yeah, my last inquiry was morning, now it's afternoon. So the last line of your ballot language here says, allow only citizens of the United States to qualify as legal voters. Are you saying that we should let people from Illinois vote on our constitutional amendments?
I believe, unless I'm incorrect, this is not my language. This is the language from HJR 43, simply moved to the bottom.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Further discussion. Lady from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to inquire of the amendment maker, please.
Does the gentleman from Clay yield?
Yes.
Proceed.
Thank you, gentlemen. This has been a long academic discussion, and I just, can you kind of clarify what it is exactly that you're attempting to do here?
Yes, lady. So this amendment is taking the proposed ballot language on page 2, lines 5 through 9. Yes, well, 6 through 9 really. And it is flipping the order of precedent. So in the initial language, the citizenship requirement comes first, followed by the transparency and review, followed by the 60% threshold. My amendment reverses that, placing the 60% threshold on top. The transparency piece remains in place. The citizenship moves to the bottom to better reflect the true intent of the amendment.
So you're not changing any language, you're just kind of,
We're just reordering the ballot language with this amendment.
And then really shifting the priority to what the true intent of the bill is.
Absolutely. I think based on the discussion today, the gentleman from St. Francis has indicated that the true intent is to raise the threshold to 60%, and the other items are secondary and tertiary, and so I think this more accurately reflects the intent.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'll tell you, one of the big frustrations for me in this body is we have a lot of lawyers who really understand legalese and how the statutes work and how they interact with each other. And we have a lot of constitutional scholars, and that's good. That's a really good mix. But oftentimes, we get caught up in these academic discussions, very high intellectual discussions, and we do very little discussion about how this actually impacts people, the people that we're here to represent. We can talk ideas and ideals, and we do that beautifully, but we seldom talk about how this really affects people. And in my district, we have a lot of people who come from all over the world, many in the process of becoming immigrated. And we also have people who have lived in these neighborhoods for generations. I am concerned that we put at the very top of this kind of divisive, confusing message that people who are not full citizens are actually voting, or that if we don't pass this, they will be able to. That's damaging to the people in my district who really work hard to get along with each other. So I appreciate your efforts here. Personally, I would prefer that we take that language out because we already know that. That's already a given, and we don't need to be confusing people. These are people who go to work, they raise children, they take care of their households. They don't spend a lot of time in the intellectual, academic, legal, constitutional scholar world. They don't. And it's infuriating that we attempt to take advantage of that. So I appreciate your work on this. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Speaker, I would just like to urge the body to reconsider what we're actually trying to do here when we put these things forward without putting it out for a larger public comment discussion time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion on House Amendment 3. Lady from St. Louis?
Platt.
Lady from Platt, my apologies.
Thank you. To inquire of the amendment maker.
Does the gentleman from Clay yield?
Yes.
Proceed.
Hi, Representative. How are you?
Hello.
Do you remember in 2020 when the Dirty Missouri initiative was on the ballot?
Yes.
Would you mind me telling you a story about ballot candy?
Please.
Okay. So before I was an honored member of this illustrious house, I was a layperson, voted in every election. Upon that day, when I looked at the Amendment 3 on the ballot, in November 2020, I read initially that they would be lowering the campaign contribution limit for the state Senate campaigns from $2,500 to $2,400. And at that time, I did not trust this body. And after this debate, I'm not sure I still do. However, I kept reading because I was like, that seems like a very small amount to change, and wanted to know what else was in that initiative or in that ballot measure. I also saw that they would be eliminating the nonpartisan state demographer and using a bipartisan commission to appoint, that the governor would appoint to do legislative redistricting. And that to me was the light bulb moment. And I was like, oh, so we want to change the amount that minimal amount of campaign contributions, but we're also going to change the way we do map making in the state during redistricting. And that for me was like a gotcha. So I wanted to tell that story to illustrate how ballot candy is launched against the people of Missouri, and how I would like to support your amendment, and I would urge this body to do the same.
Thank you, lady. Further discussion on House Amendment 3. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak on the amendment.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm hopeful that my colleagues will vote for this amendment because I believe it's honest. It says what the ballot measure will really be about. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid that this amendment will fail along party lines like the last two have, because this is kind of like a sandwich, Mr. Speaker, this ballot language, right? You got the top bun, and that's the fear of the other. And then you go a little bit deeper and you got some condiments. You got what is going to everywhere and making people feel like they are a part of the process. Now, we can't change the language, but let's make people feel like they're a part of the process. And then, finally, you got the last back bun and nobody eats. And that is what is really about in this ballot language. That is making sure that folks can't use the initiative petition process anymore. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion on House Amendment 3. Seeing none. Gentleman from Clay, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just would like to reiterate this amendment is about transparency and nothing more. Nothing is being changed, nothing is being removed. This is simply to better reflect the intent of the amendment when it is put before the people for a vote. And with that, I renew my motion.
The gentleman from Clay has renewed his motion for the adoption of House Amendment 3. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. All those opposed will say no. And the noes have it. You failed to adopt House Amendment 3. Further discussion on House Committee Substitute for House Joint Resolution 43. Lady from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To inquire of the bill sponsor.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. We've been having a lot of conversations about your bill today. A lot of great conversations. So part of the conversation that I want to discuss with you is on your bill, page 2, lines 16 through 18. Do you have that?
I do.
Okay. So my question to you is, why is that language put in there? It's already in the Constitution, so I just kind of want your opinion. I know we've had conversations about it kind of earlier this morning, but I just kind of want to...
I think it's the same thing. It's clarification language, and what we have in the Constitution, the only place I see, we have in statute, you have to be an American citizen. Only place I have it is Amendment 26, Section 1, that I found anything that even relates to that, so it's not a bad thing to have that in our Constitution.
I mean, do you mean Article 8, Section 2?
Article 8, Section 2, what does it say?
All citizens of the United States, including occupants of soldiers soldiers and sailors' homes over the age of 18 who are residents of this state and a political subdivision in which they offer to vote are entitled to vote at all elections by the people if the election is one for which registration is required.
Okay.
So it's all citizens of the United States. So, I mean, it's already in there. It's redundant. I mean,
So we're just codifying something that's in there is what you're saying?
well, I'm asking you, I mean, like, it's already in there, so why is this language added to it? You know, it's just, it's already
Just
there.
what? It's just what?
It's already there. So why have more language to add to it? I mean, it's already in there.
It's the ballot language we came up with. I think it's pretty, we've explained that numerous times on this floor. I think it
Okay.
works for this ballot. It's the same language we passed out last year.
Who came up with it?
There are numerous people who worked on this language.
Okay. Like lobbyists, state
No,
reps?
there weren't any
Like-
lobbyists, but
like,
number
I
of
mean,
people worked on it. I can't tell you off the top of my head. This has been through numerous people who reviewed it, looked at it, said what they thought. We've worked on this for 2 years, so I can't go back 2 years and tell you every
Right.
person that's looked at it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment ending in .01H and it has been distributed. I move for its adoption.
The lady from Jackson has moved for the adoption of House Amendment 4. Further discussion. Lady from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So what this amendment does is, I'm going to say this. I know we all hate this, but it is the most simple amendment that we have ever heard. It literally just takes out lines 16 through 18 and leaves it as is, which is enacted by the people of the state of Missouri. Why? Because it's already in Article 8, Section 2, as I just stated. It's extra verbiage. This is already in the Constitution. We do not need this. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'm open for questions.
Further discussion on House Amendment 4. Lady from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to inquire of the amendment maker, please.
Does the lady from Jackson yield?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you, lady. You heard my exchange with the earlier amendment, the one who made the offer. You and I shared, after redistricting, you and I had some overlap in our districts, didn't we?
Correct.
And can you, do you know, can you kind of give a description in your opinion of what I was saying about the people who live there?
Yeah, definitely. Yes. So, I mean, the people, if you do just maybe re-clarify the question in case people don't remember.
Well, I was talking about how the population of people who live within those district lines and where they come from, how they earn their living, their livelihoods, how they live their lives. Can you describe some of that from what your observation was?
Yeah, lady. So, I mean, we have a very diverse districts.
Mm-hmm.
Yours especially, District 19 is very diverse, and so is District 24. And we have people from all walks of life who reside in our districts, and they have, they're citizens, they're registered. I do not believe that this language is needed.
But would you agree, so it's an extremely diverse population that encompasses many levels, but primarily different ethnicities,
Mm-hmm.
different countries, people that speak different languages, and they're on a continuum of immigration status.
Yes, 100%.
Some have had to come over under duress.
Some are refugees and some, yes.
But all are working, right?
Yes.
Working hard, establishing businesses. I like to say our international market over in Northeast, for example, you could get anything in the world and rely on it being authentic because of the import shops and the restaurants and the religions.
Oh, 100%, lady, yes. And in my district alone, that was one of the reasons why I fell in love with Kansas City, was all of the diverse and ethnic backgrounds that we are able to provide. And that includes from restaurants to shopping to just events. And a lot of different people who come to Kansas City that I've met, They fell in love with it because of the uniqueness and because it's the Midwest and we are all very nice.
So another piece of the diversity is the people who have moved in from out of the area and have been attracted to that diversity, as well as people who've lived there for generations and generations and generations, especially over on West Side. I think you covered West Side prior to me having it.
I did.
And that's got a strong base of generational families and residents.
Yes, of Hispanic descent too. We have Maddie Rhodes there in the West Side that provides a lot of different either educational arts background, things like that. They also have bilingual classes. So it's a really center of the West Side.
Very, very eclectic. So you can, where I was going with all of that is you can see how it would cause some confusion among the different groups of people when we start talking about, when we start putting a ballot initiative out there that says only citizens can vote.
Agree.
That's the point of your amendment.
Yes.
And I really appreciate that. As I said to the earlier amendment sponsor, that's what I would like to see, is to have this taken out. Thank you so much for this work that you're doing. I urge the body to support this amendment. Mr. Speaker, may I inquire of the bill sponsor, please?
Does the gentleman from St. Francis yield?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you for taking my inquiry, gentlemen. You've heard my discussion.
I did.
And I'm wondering if you have a response.
I'm still going to, a response in what way are you wanting a response?
Well, I'd like to know that you hear me and that you hear my concern about how this affects people in my district.
You mean by only letting American citizens vote?
I mean we already do that and we accept that. I mean by putting it out there, causing the suspicion that maybe we're not. Maybe we are letting people who are not citizens vote.
We're not trying to put any suspicion out there. We're just trying to make sure we clarify that and put it forward. I don't think that was our intent at all.
What I was hoping, though, was that you would hear my concern.
Oh, I know you care about the people in your district greatly. You've always been an advocate for them, and I understand that.
And that they might be confused by this.
I hope not, but again, I know you always are caring. You care about the people. You fight for your advocate, just like what I do for my people in my district, for your district.
Can you... Do you have a response to those folks to my folks
I don't
about
know what
why
response
it's
I could
important
really give them.
to put this out there?
I mean, I don't know what response you're looking for. I don't know what response I could really give them. I understand where you're coming from. As I said, you will fight for the people in your district. I fight for the ones in mine. I am not against the people in your district in any way whatsoever. We're just trying to move a bill forward that would go before the people and let the people vote on it.
Okay, well, I'm sorry that I think we have a disconnect going here, and I hope that we have more opportunity to vet this a little bit as this bill moves forward. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion on House Amendment 4. Lady from Platte.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From a microphone not my own. Can I inquire of the amendment maker?
Does the amendment maker from Jackson yield?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, lady.
Good afternoon.
I was hoping that you could share a little bit more about your unique perspective potentially on this and your background, where you were born, and your citizenship status.
100%, lady. So when we sit here and talk about things like American citizen, I like to, advise the body, I'm a naturalized citizen. I was born in South Korea. I was adopted. So I came to Kansas. Sorry, I came to Kansas. So I came to Kansas when I was very young, and my parents went through the procedure to get me to become a naturalized citizen. And so, yes, I'm a citizen of the United States. But when we sit here and talk about American citizens, that language can really hurt some of the other minority groups that might hear that and not quite understand or get maybe, confused about the language that's coming to them. Because when you say American citizen, it's a little different. So.
Right. I mean, especially when you factor in language barriers and, there's already, I think, a lot of anxiety in immigrant communities. Over the last 5-10 years or so, I feel like it's grown. We've seen it. We've seen hate crimes rise, specifically in the AAPI community, as you know. And, I think that making sure that we aren't further confusing folks and further confusing the folks who are already on the margins of society, who are already feeling left out of a lot of bureaucratic processes, it can be a real challenge.
I agree, lady. And, this is making it more divisive as well. And that is something that if this is supposed to go to the vote of the people, then that's supposed to be the vote of the people. And making it completely divisive and language that is completely confusing is not going to be a good vote to the people.
Right. And, I think that, in my opinion, this language is what I would consider to be a dog whistle. It's one of those things where it's language used to signify to a certain group of folks that they should support something, and the language being used is a dog whistle to folks who are maybe confused or misled about who is able to vote in our country and our state currently.
100%, lady. And, on the Secretary of State's website, there's a list of who can vote, who cannot. And so, it's there. The Secretary of State has all the information on who, how you can vote. They even have issues where if you were incarcerated and now you are out, they have all that information on there. So, in my eyes, this is not needed language.
Completely unnecessary. Thank you.
Further discussion on House Amendment 4. Gentleman from Green.
To inquire of the original bill handler, Mr. Speaker.
Does the gentleman from St. Francis yield?
I do. Thank you, sir. The question that's being discussed right now as to whether or not the Missouri State Constitution currently has language sufficient to cover what's in this particular resolution to be presented to the people. The Missouri State Constitution says that all citizens of the United States who are eligible to vote can vote. Is that your understanding?
That's my understanding.
So there are no states in the United States of America that have constitutions which specifically allow for non-citizens to vote. There are, however, multiple municipalities in several states that do allow for non-citizens to vote. There are only 4 states in the United States whose constitutions prohibit that explicitly. So there is a significant difference between saying all citizens of the United States eligible to vote may do so and saying only citizens of the United States eligible to vote may do so. And I think that's the language that's in this resolution, in your bill, that is different from what the Constitution of the state of Missouri actually says as of right now. And without trying to hurt anybody's feelings, the premise that only those who are actually citizens of the United States of America who have the eligibility to vote, theirs are the voices that can be heard and should only be heard, is not a radical position. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, gentlemen.
Further discussion on House Amendment 4. The gentleman from St. Louis County.
To speak on the resolution.
Please proceed.
This bill sponsor used the word hoodwinked, and I think that's what we're doing with this here. We know, you know why the language is what it is, and we know what this resolution does. It's to dupe the public, fire up the base, and unnecessarily add language, all to get it passed and take the power away from the people. The representative from the Randolph district is saying we should raise the number to 60% because not enough people show up. Why don't they show up? Maybe because some on the other side of the aisle have sown great distrust in our election process. So saying we should raise the number from 50 plus 1 to 60% because not enough people who vote show up might possibly be because of the dishonest rhetoric from your side of the aisle. If the true reason is about money coming in from out of the state, what about our elections, Mr. Speaker? There was more money coming in from out of state in District 92, more than my opponent and I combined. Well over $100,000 from out of state money. So if you are saying you are okay with the money, that we can no longer give the power to the people because of that, and are not doing anything to stop outside money from coming in for elections, seems disingenuous to me. We've spoken about the Secretary of State. I want to talk about his father, former Governor John Ashcroft. 2 years ago he said this: "It is through the initiative petition process that those who have no influence with elected representatives may take their cause directly to the people. The General Assembly should be reluctant, therefore, to enact legislation which places any impediments on the initiative power which are inconsistent with the reservations found in the Constitution." The previous governor of this state got it. We should not be trying to take power away from the people, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion on House Amendment 4. Gentleman from St. Louis County, Adams District.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To inquire of the bill sponsor, the gentleman from St. Francois.
Does the gentleman from St. Francis yield?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you, gentlemen, for taking this inquiry. I just have a simple question. If this question of citizenship is so important to you, so germane, why haven't you just issue a simple HJR spelling it out, who can vote for whatever, that they must be a citizen of Missouri and so forth? Why not just that clean concept?
I would leave that to somebody else. Again, I'm trying to bring forward a bill that would set the threshold at 60%. And
then
let the people vote
again, my question then, sir, is in why all this other stuff? If what you are intending is for a 60% threshold, why isn't that first? Why is this citizenship? If the citizen, and you said it is, if it was important, if its citizenship is so important, why is it first? And if it is that important, why isn't it just by itself?
I think I've answered this question probably 15 or 20 times now, right now. I think it's just clarification language that we're going to make sure that's in there, but it's just a small part, very small part of what is a much larger bill dealing with initiative petition reform.
Again, I say, if it's that important, it should be by itself. I thought there was one thing that we always try to do, or like to do, we never succeed, is to have issues put before us in this body and the citizens.
I think it is still one issue.
I know you believe that, sir. But my question is, if it is so darn important, why isn't it by itself? And why is it tied into other things? That's the only question I've got. That's something for everyone in this body to think about. If it really is that important, it should be by itself, and we should tell the citizens of this state, this is what we really want. This is why it's so important, this piece of ballot candy. Here it is. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I would hope the body vote for this amendment because I believe it spells out what we really are trying to do. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for your indulgence.
Further discussion on House Amendment 4. Gentleman from St. Louis City.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to speak from a microphone not my own.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I also inquire of the lady from the Lewis 25th District?
There's a lady from Jackson. Yep.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
How you doing, lady?
Well, hello.
Good to see you this evening.
It feels like it, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's probably this is our first long debate of the year, and interesting. We're talking about legislation that is, in my opinion, making it harder for the people to voice their opinion. If this is the way we're setting the tone, I guess it's going to be an interesting session. But I know we were having some conversation about this. I just want to get your opinion. One, before we talk about the bigger bill, about the lady amendment that just has an amendment currently right now on the floor.
Yeah, I definitely support the ladies' amendment. I think what was brought up earlier by the HJR sponsor that our Constitution is lengthy, but we're also being redundant with this ballot language by adding what's already in the Constitution. So we're making it even longer with redundant language. So I think the ladies' amendment is spot on.
Yeah, and I mean, like she said, it probably is one of the most simplest amendments I've seen so far in the legislature, at least this session. We'll see. Maybe they'll get some more. But like you say, this language is already in our Constitution. It already exists. So why are we doing this again? I know we also heard from the lady from the Ingrid district, can't think of Burnett's district, about just how diverse her district is, and I want to talk a little bit about mines in the St. Louis City area. So I cover, it's called Cherokee Street. It's a very very popular, dense Hispanic community that has resided over in South St. Louis. And when I look at this language, and this language being the start of this whole HJR, outside of knowing how, in my opinion, this ballot initiative already is trying to, be honest, kind of disenfranchise voters and to silence their voice, and then we lead with such things saying only a U.S. citizen can vote, which would make people feel like that they're not and would take that power away from them. It's just very discouraging. It's unfortunate that, again, this is the beginning of the ballot language on such an important piece of legislation that I'm happy we're having conversations around, having a robust conversation, but to lead with such language that divides us isn't, I think, not just appropriate, but not beneficial for the state of Missouri and the people of Missouri.
Thank you, Representative, for bringing that up and sharing your district and your opinion. When you say, and I agree with you 100%, in our first major debate this session and starting off with divisive language. I know you and I both have many friends across the aisle, and we often we say, we agree on 90% of this stuff. Well, the folks in my district back home, I'm sure as yours, they'd prefer us to focus on the needs of real Missourians versus divisive language such as this. We're one of the bottom when it comes to funding our teachers, funding our state workers. Our maternal mortality rate is extremely high. I find it very disappointing and divisive that we're doing this right out of the gate, and I would prefer us to work on things that really help Missourians and move Missouri forward. And I'm not just saying that as my opinion. I do an annual survey to see what.
You send out a survey to your district?
What? Yeah, to see what my constituents are thinking as we anticipate priorities of the upcoming election. We knew this was coming back, and I specifically asked my district if they want to have the IP process stay the same. And while I'm still tabulating some of the information, over 88% of my district said, keep it the way it is, it's working well. So just wanted to let you know what my district thinks about this whole conversation that we're having.
No, I appreciate that. And I know the bill sponsor had mentioned he get a lot of
Facebook messages, probably from people in his district that are talking about want to make it different than maybe what we agree to actually make it the same. And I do want to echo something that you said, the fact that this is the first thing we're kicking out the gate. Regardless, I think, of whatever side of the aisle you stand on, there's so much more important pieces of legislation we could be talking about when you're talking about supporting our teachers in some of our rural areas. They're going to like 4 days a week. How do we make sure that we empower our children, making sure that we're supporting the individuals that keep our state going, our state workers, right? How do we ensure that they have a livable wage so that our state can continue to operate? And this is the first, as people have been saying, ballot candy and rhetoric legislation right out the gate. It's already a disappointing tone that we're setting back to the people of the state of Missouri. So I just want to take a time to have a little conversation with you, lady, and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion, lady from Jackson Young District.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To inquire of the amendment maker from the Weber District.
Does the lady from Jackson yield?
I do.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, lady.
Good afternoon.
A fellow Jackson representative. The two of us sit on a couple of committees together. Is that correct?
Correct.
And what I know about you is that you do your research. I've been watching. And so I know you've done your research in terms of why you're offering this bill. So I just really wanted to commend you for offering it today. I get what you're trying to do, and if I'm following you correctly, you are really just trying to be more sensitive and inclusive of the Missourians here that live on this land.
I mean, yes, that's correct. That's part of it. And the other part is this is already redundant. It's already in our Constitution. So why add it? Why add it some more? It's already in the Constitution.
And I do agree with you. And there's nothing like making things simple.
Exactly.
Which makes it easier for everybody to digest. So I appreciate you bringing this forward. And do you get a sense that your message is getting across to the majority in the room?
I'm not really sure. As we've seen the votes go, it's already pretty straight. We're already divided. So we will have to see. But hopefully, I hope the body just understands that this is just language that is already in there in our Constitution. And this is just going back to what it was, cleaning that up. That's it. So it's taking out those lines and then just leaving it as is.
And I agree. There's no sense of us being redundant. And I'm going to be redundant and say I like the fact that it's simple. And we do need to include as many people as we can when we're talking about, initiative petitions, not making it harder, making it easier, making it simple, and making it accessible. So appreciate what you've done.
Thank you.
Further discussion on House Amendment 4. Lady from St. Louis City, Bosley District.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To inquire of the bill handler.
Does the gentleman from St. Francis yield?
I do.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I am okay. I just have a very quick question for you. How many people were in favor of this bill?
When and where along the line are you talking about?
I mean, when
I think
it came
out of
committee.
committee. I don't remember the exact voting committee. I think it was probably along party lines out of committee.
Well, I'm talking about the constituency or people who advocated for. How many people were in favor of the bill when they testified?
We've never taken a vote on testifying. We had several that testified in support. We had some that testified against, so it was a little bit of both.
So you don't know the exact number?
I do not know the exact number off the top of my head.
Okay, so I believe it was 12 people who were in support and roughly over 320 plus who were against. So we're talking about 60% of going to the ballot measure, but you had majority of the people talk on your bill or submit testimony against this particular bill. So if we're going to acknowledge that threshold of a percentage amount of what something should be passed by, we should also acknowledge the percentage amount of people who do not want this bill to pass or are not in support of it. So I appreciate you, gentlemen. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, to speak on the bill very briefly.
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, as I just said, you had majority of the people who testified on this bill who testified against it. And I'm pretty sure there are not people just from St. Louis City or St. Louis County, Kansas City. This is people from across the entire state, from either a lot of your districts. So if we're talking about supporting our districts and voting for our districts and voting our districts, then it would be wise for you to vote against this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion on House Amendment 4. Gentleman from St. Louis County, Meredith District.
City, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. To inquire of the gentleman from Green, 137 Chapel, I believe.
Does the gentleman from Green yield?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, gentlemen. I'll be quick with this. You brought up some questions about potentially elsewhere in the country, there are municipalities allowing non-citizens to vote in certain elections?
Yes, sir.
Did I hear that correctly? Do you think that that is a risk that might happen here in Missouri?
That municipalities in the state of Missouri might take liberties against the citizens of their areas? Sure.
Okay, I might word it differently, but I hear you. So is it your belief that our Constitution is currently vague, and that's why this has to be clarified to prevent municipalities from doing that?
It was not my intention to suggest that the language ought to be one way or the other. I was just simply pointing out that saying that all citizens may vote and saying that only citizens may vote are two different things.
Understood. So I would give you a heads up, and really the body a heads up on this. It's worth noting that this language in here only actually applies to initiative petitions. I'm not sure, it might only even apply to constitutional amendments, but the language about citizenship is in a section about initiative petitions, which means it's just about them. It's actually quite plausible that adding this in the Constitution would strengthen an argument that other types of elections could allow non-citizens to vote. Because why single it out in this section if it's not otherwise allowed? And so it might actually make it more likely that a municipality would take a liberty on a specific election to allow non-citizens to vote. Do you see that possibility?
That may very well be the case. In fact, that was the exact argument that the Anti-Federalists made against ratification of the Bill of Rights, that by enumerating them specifically, it might imply that there were other rights not recognized by the Constitution itself. So I recognize exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
Again, I would not be adverse to having an amendment to the Constitution that makes it true for all elections within the state of Missouri that you must be a United States citizen.
Understood.
Would you concur?
Well, I don't think it's necessary because I do think that's the law. But I think if this goes in, that might actually become necessary because this would put into question that being the law. So I would simply suggest that if you actually believe that, you should vote for this amendment, because this amendment takes that out of here and lets the law stay as it is currently, rather than creating a situation where we might actually open the door to something that is not currently allowed. Thank you, gentlemen. Go ahead if you've got
just very, very briefly. You have my word that if that becomes the case, I'll be the first one to sponsor an amendment to correct that.
Yeah, I hear you. It sounds to me like we're just creating more opportunities to fight over a fight that isn't real. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion, gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to inquire of the gentleman from Green.
Gentleman from who? Where?
Green.
Green? Does the gentleman from Green yield? Gentleman from Green Chapel District, do you yield to the inquiry from the gentleman from St. Louis County?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So, can you explain to me the difference between all citizens and only citizens?
Sure. All citizens says that all citizens, individuals who are citizens of the United States, have the ability to vote within an election, but it does not limit non-citizens from being able to do so, whereas only citizens of the United States would make that exclusion to non-citizens.
Okay, I don't get it. So, tell me exactly who you're trying to exclude from this process.
Not trying to exclude anyone. Again, my point was to draw the distinction between the verbiage of the two.
Is it a distinction without a difference if you can't tell me who we're excluding?
It is not. It is not.
Well, what's the difference?
May I offer an example?
Sure, that's what I asked for.
All state representatives are allowed on the floor during session, but only state representatives being allowed on the floor during session is a completely different thing.
I don't see the difference.
100%. Because the people in the gallery are not allowed to come onto the floor because they're not state representatives.
Right.
So one's exclusionary, one's inclusionary.
If you say all state representatives can come onto the floor, can the doorman come onto the floor? He's not a state representative.
There are specific rules. I'm giving you a generalized example. So what the point is, there is no one who is a state representative who is not allowed on the floor with all state representatives are allowed on the floor. But if the rule were only state representatives are allowed on the floor, we would all be able to be here, but no one else could be. And that's just how language works.
I don't think I know how language works then. So again, tell me who we're excluding. Are we trying to exclude non-resident folks? Are we trying to exclude folks that are in the military? Who are we trying to exclude? Are we trying to exclude people that are undocumented? Because, go ahead.
Again, I'm not trying to exclude anyone. I'm trying to explain the difference between all and only, and that was the only reason why I rose to speak.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to continue.
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I quickly Googled non-citizens voting, and I came upon a source that I don't usually quote, and it's the Heritage Foundation in a piece that originally appeared in Fox News. And it says, sometimes common sense can prevail, even in far out California. Last week, California Superior Judge Richard Ulmer ruled that only citizens have the right to vote. In this, he echoed an earlier ruling by the New York Supreme Court. So in the two most finger quote liberal states in the country, judges ruled that only citizens can vote. When we put this language in the Constitution, that's not stopping a city from trying it like New York City did or like a city in Los Angeles did. It just takes it to court. And it's going to end up the same way. So again, it's not a matter of citizens being able to vote or making sure that folks feel like they're a part of the process. It's stripping the process so that citizens can't use it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion on House Amendment 4. Seeing none, Lady from Jackson, you're recognized to renew your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, this amendment is one of the most simplest amendments that we're going to hear probably this week. And so with that, I really urge the body to support it. All it's doing is taking out that language and leaving it as is. That's it. It's already in our Constitution. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I close.
The lady from Jackson has renewed her motion for the adoption of House Amendment 4 to House Committee Substitute to House Joint Resolution 43. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. And those opposed, no. And the noes have it. You failed to adopt House Amendment 4. Further discussion on House Committee Substitute to House Joint Resolution 43. Seeing none, gentleman from St. Francis, you're recognized to renew your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to remind the body of a few things. Remember, this is only constitutional amendments. It does not touch statutory amendments. Remember, all we're doing is taking this to a vote of the people. The people get to decide if they agree with us or don't agree with us. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
The gentleman from St. Francis has renewed his motion for the adoption of House Committee Substitute to House Joint Resolution 43. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. And those opposed, no. And the ayes have it. You've adopted House Committee Substitute to House Joint Resolution 43. Gentleman from St. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
The gentleman from St. Francis has renewed his motion for the perfection and printing of House Committee Substitute to House Joint Resolution 43. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. Mr. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. By your vote of 106 yea, 50 nay, 0 present, You have ordered House Committee Substitute to House Joint Resolution 43 perfected and printed. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before announcements, I ask you to recognize the gentleman from St. Charles for a quick introduction of a special guest.
Gentleman from St. Charles.
Introduction of special guest, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On my left and your right, between the third and fourth columns, is a very special guest of mine. She is not only a constituent, she is here advocating for Alzheimer's awareness, and she is also a former member of this chamber, serving back in 2004 to 2010, in which she left to become the mayor of the city of St. Charles. So the other gentleman from St. Charles, Wilson District, and I would ask that the body help welcome former Representative Sally Faith.
Representative, welcome back to the House. Gentleman from St. Charles.
Use a microphone other than my own, Mr. Speaker?
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a very special group with me here today. I would ask them to step forward in between the middle columns here, the 3 and 4 column, to my left and your right. This is a wonderful group of entrepreneurs from across the state of Missouri, and I'd like to introduce them. We have Steve Smith, we have Jeff Neal, Randy Schilling, Nick Freud, Randall Brandt, and Riley Price. All of them have done a remarkable job of investing throughout our communities in various parts of the state, and I ask that the House would please make them feel welcome.
Welcome to the House. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be announcements.
Announcements. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Government Downsizing will reconvene in hearing room 5 upon adjournment.
Gentleman from Jasper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Utilities will meet in hearing room 1 in 5 minutes.
Gentleman from Webster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Budget Subcommittee on Health, Mental Health, and Senior Services will reconvene in 10 minutes following adjournment. Thank you, sir.
Gentleman from St. Francis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Administration and Accounts will be meeting in hearing room 4 at 15 after the hour.
Gentleman from Pulaski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Transportation Accountability will meet at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Lady from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Announcement?
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Transportation Infrastructure will meet in 30 minutes upon adjournment in House Hearing Room 7.
Gentleman from Washington.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Ways and Means will meet in the morning in hearing room 5 at 8 o'clock.
Gentleman from Cole.
Announcement.
Please proceed.
Your Committee on Corrections and Public Institutions will meet today at 4:30. Thank you.
Further announcements. Gentleman from St. Charles County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a proud member of the Bowtie Caucus, I'd like for everyone to know that we'll be having our official weekly photo right in front of the dais upon adjournment.
Further announcements. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Upon return, members should be prepared to third read House Committee Substitute for House Joint Resolution 43. And with no other business before the body, I ask that the House stand adjourned until 9 a.m. Thursday, February 2nd, 2023.
The gentleman from Jackson has moved that the House stand adjourned until 9 a.m. Thursday, February the 2nd, 2023. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. And those opposed, no. And the ayes have it. The House is adjourned.